The moment Elena Moretti answered back in flawless Italian, she signed her own death warrant. One careless insult from a stranger in an expensive suit. One whispered conversation she wasn't supposed to understand. 1 second of reckless courage that shattered months of careful silence. Now the most dangerous man in Manhattan knows she exists, and worse, knows she's been listening. In a world where secrets are currency and silence means survival, Elena just spent everything she had. The hunter has become the hunted, and there's no going back. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels. The rain hammered against the windows of Circo Massimo like bullets, each drop a tiny explosion against the glass that separated Manhattan's elite from the storm outside. Elena Moretti moved through the dining room like a ghost, invisible, inconsequential, exactly as she'd trained herself to be for the past 8 months. Invisible is safe, she reminded herself, balancing a tray of champagne flutes with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Invisible means alive. The restaurant buzzed with the kind of quiet wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Crystal chandeliers cast warm pools of light over white tablecloths. The clink of silverware against bone china provided a delicate percussion beneath the murmur of conversation. Oil paintings in gilt frames, probably authentic, probably worth more than Elena would make in 10 years, watched from the walls with the serene indifference of old money. She'd learned every face in this room. Not just the regulars, but their patterns, their preferences, their secrets whispered over wine when they thought the help wasn't listening. The stockbroker in table 7 who was embezzling from his clients. The councilman in table 12 who met his mistress here every Thursday. The society wife who slipped pills into her water glass when she thought no one was watching. But tonight, Elena's attention fixated on table 4. Luca DeSantis sat with his back to the wall. Always the wall, never the window. His dark suit so perfectly tailored it made the expensive fabric look like casual wear. He was younger than she'd expected from the surveillance photos, maybe 35, with the kind of sharp-featured handsomeness that belonged on Roman coins. His black hair was swept back from a face that managed to be both beautiful and dangerous, like a Renaissance painting of an avenging angel. Or a fallen one, Elena thought. 3 men sat with him, their body language a masterclass in hierarchy. Marco Terranova to his right, thick-necked and watchful, his hands never far from the gun she knew he carried in a shoulder holster. Enzo Calabrese across from him, older, calculating, his eyes constantly scanning the room with the paranoia of someone who'd survived decades in a business that killed most men before 40. And Dante Russo, the lawyer, his manicured fingers wrapped around a wine glass that cost more than Elena's monthly rent. For 8 months she'd served them, poured their wine, cleared their plates, laughed at their jokes when appropriate, disappeared when not needed. The perfect waitress, the invisible woman. And for 8 months, she'd been gathering everything, names, dates, connections, the architecture of an empire built on violence and wrapped in expensive suits. Special Agent Elena Moretti, FBI Organized Crime Task Force, deep cover, zero backup. One chance to bring down the DeSantis family before they could execute their plan to eliminate Michael Ferrante, the federal prosecutor who'd spent 5 years building a RICO case against them. The hit was scheduled for next week, maybe sooner. The chatter had been increasing, the conversations more pointed, the tension in these rooms thick enough to taste. Elena. Mario, the head waiter, materialized at her elbow with the supernatural timing of someone who'd worked fine dining for 30 years. Table 4 needs a wine refresh, the Barolo. She nodded, grateful her hands didn't shake as she retrieved the bottle from the temperature-controlled cabinet. The label claimed it was from a vineyard in Piedmont, dated 1997, $3,000 a bottle. She'd looked it up after the first time they'd ordered it. Elena approached table 4 with the measured steps of someone who belonged in the background. Marco's eyes tracked her with the dead stare of a predator assessing prey, but she'd long since learned to ignore it. Enzo didn't even glance up. Dante nodded absently, more interested in whatever Luca was saying. Gentlemen, she kept her voice soft, professional, American accented. The person she was supposed to be, Elena Moretti, third-generation Italian-American from the Bronx, barely spoke the language, needed this job to pay off student loans from a degree she never finished. May I refresh your wine? Luca waved a hand without looking at her, continuing his conversation in rapid Italian. His voice was cultured, educated, nothing like the guttural street Italian she'd expected. This was the Italian of someone raised speaking it, probably in the old country, probably in a villa older than America itself. She poured carefully, filling each glass to the precise level she'd been trained to achieve, and that's when the words began to register. Il problema è ferrante, Luca was saying, his tone casual, discussing murder the way other men might discuss the weather. He's become too confident, thinks his security detail makes him untouchable. Elena's hand remained steady on the bottle, but her pulse kicked up. Focus, breathe, pour, don't react. The apartment? Marco asked in Italian, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer. Too obvious, too contained. Luca swirled his wine, watching the light play through the deep red liquid. We need something public. Something that sends a message. The courthouse steps, maybe. Or that cafe he visits every morning. The cafe. Elena knew it. She'd been there, photographed it, mapped the exits as part of the protective detail briefing she'd helped prepare before going deep undercover. Ferrante went there every morning at 7, ordered the same coffee, sat at the same table. Creatures of habit made easy targets. When? Enzo's voice, careful and measured. Soon. Luca set down his glass. Before he can file the additional indictments. We've waited long enough. Elena finished pouring Dante's wine, her mind racing through options. She needed to get this to her handler, needed to warn the protective detail, needed to... Che bella ragazza, Marco said suddenly, his eyes traveling over her body with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. What a beautiful girl, too beautiful to be wasting her time serving wine to men like us. The others chuckled, the conversation shifting to cruder territory. Elena had heard it before, endured it before, knew the script. Smile slightly, demur, disappear. That was the play. But Marco wasn't finished. Look at those legs, that ass. You know what I'd like to do to a waitress like that? His Italian turned graphic, descriptive, dehumanizing her in words he assumed she couldn't understand. The others laughed harder. Enzo made an approving gesture. Dante shook his head in mock disapproval that fooled no one. And Luca watched her with those dark eyes, something calculating in his expression, waiting to see how she'd react to words she supposedly couldn't comprehend. Elena felt the rage building in her chest, hot and bright. 8 months of this. 8 months of being invisible, being talked about like an object, being... No, hold it together. You're almost done. 1 more week, and you can bring them all down. Don't... Pity she probably can't even cook, Marco continued, warming to his theme. These American girls, they're only good for one thing, and even then you have to teach them. The bottle slipped. It didn't actually slip, but Elena made it look like it did, tilted it just wrong so that deep red wine splashed across the pristine white tablecloth, across Marco's expensive suit, across the space between what she was and what she wanted to be. Oh my God, she switched to English, her voice rising in manufactured panic. I'm so sorry, I'm so... Stupid bitch. Marco surged to his feet, wine dripping from his jacket. In English now, his accent thick and angry. You ruined my... Vai a farti fottere, Elena said quietly. Go fuck yourself. In perfect, unaccented Italian. The table went silent. 4 pairs of eyes locked on her with the sudden, complete attention of predators who just realized the rabbit might have teeth. Elena's mind screamed at her. What have you done? What have you done? What have you done? But her mouth kept moving, the rage that had built over 8 months of degradation finally finding its voice. You think because I pour your wine, I can't understand you. She continued in Italian, each word precise and cold. You think because I smile and nod, I'm deaf to every vile thing you say? I speak 4 languages, you crude bastardo. Italian was my first. Marco's hand moved toward his jacket, toward the gun she knew was there, but Luca's hand shot out, gripping his wrist with enough force to make the larger man wince. Don't. Just 1 word, but it carried absolute authority. Luca stood slowly, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. He moved around the table with the unhurried grace of someone who knew violence intimately and had no need to rush toward it. When he stood in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody, he was taller than she'd realized. 6'2" at least, with the lean, hard build of someone who stayed in shape not for vanity, but for function. "You speak Italian," he said softly, still in Italian, his voice carrying no anger, just intense curiosity. "Interesting. What else haven't you told us, Elena Moretti?" Her cover story evaporated like morning mist. She could try to salvage it, claim her grandmother taught her, claim she was embarrassed about understanding, claim anything. But the look in his eyes told her he'd already moved past simple lies. "Who are you?" Luca asked, and this time there was steel beneath the silk. The restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners pretended not to watch, but Elena could feel their attention like heat against her skin. Mario had disappeared, probably to call the owner, probably to distance himself from whatever was about to happen. She had maybe 3 seconds to make a choice that would determine whether she lived through the next 5 minutes. Option 1. Run. Try to make it to the street, to witnesses, to somewhere public enough that they couldn't. But Marco had moved to block the main exit and Enzo was already standing, cutting off the path to the kitchen. Option 2. Lie better. Claim trauma, claim fear, claim she'd been hiding her language skills because of past harassment, But Luca's eyes told her he was done with lies, which left option 3. The truth. A version of it, anyway. "My name is Elena Moretti," she said, switching to English, her voice steady despite the adrenaline screaming through her veins. "And you're right, I haven't been entirely honest about why I'm here. Is that so?" Luca's tone remained conversational, but his posture had shifted subtly. He was balanced on the balls of his feet now, ready to move in any direction, ready to react if she tried something stupid. Elena's training screamed at her to keep her hands visible, to show no aggression, to de-escalate. But another part of her, the part that had just demolished 8 months of careful cover, wanted to see this through. "I needed this job," she continued, the lie mixing with truth in a cocktail she hoped would taste believable. "My father has gambling debts, serious ones, the kind that don't go away just because you ask nicely." Luca tilted his head slightly, listening. "I thought if I worked here I might overhear something useful, something I could trade, information for forgiveness." She laughed, and it came out bitter and real because part of this, at least, was true. Her father did have gambling debts. He was dying of them, drowned in whiskey and regret in a VA hospital in Queens. "But I'm not brave enough to actually do anything with what I hear. I just pour wine and dream about having the courage to be something more than invisible." It was a good story, almost true, the kind of lie that could explain away her language skills, her attention to their conversations, even the anger that had made her break cover. But Luca DeSantis hadn't built an empire by believing convenient stories. "You're lying," he said simply. "Not about everything, but enough." He reached out and took her chin in his hand, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. His grip was firm but not painful, the touch of someone used to commanding obedience with presence rather than force. "I'm going to ask you one more time, Elena Moretti. Who are you?" She could feel the weight of the question, the danger coiled in the space between them. Could feel Marco's hand still hovering near his gun, Enzo's calculating gaze measuring her for a body bag, Dante's lawyer brain already working out how to make her disappear without legal consequence. And she could feel something else too, something she hadn't expected and definitely didn't want. A spark of recognition in Luca's eyes, as if he saw something in her that intrigued him beyond the immediate problem of her deception. "This is it," she thought. "Make the call. Blow your cover completely and hope you can talk your way into protective custody, or double down on the lie and pray he believes you." But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. The door to the restaurant burst open, and a kid, couldn't be more than 19, soaked from the rain and breathing hard, stumbled in calling Luca's name. "Boss! Boss, we got problems!" Luca's eyes never left Elena's face, but his grip on her chin tightened incrementally. "This better be important, Tommy." "It's Ferrante," the kid gasped. They moved up the timeline. "Hits scheduled for tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. The cafe." Elena felt her blood turn to ice. Tomorrow morning. She thought they had a week, thought she had time to... "Who authorized this?" Luca's voice had gone deadly quiet. "Salvatore," Tommy said. "He said you'd approve it. Said we couldn't wait no more. Said, Salvatore is going to die slowly for making decisions without my approval. Luca said, still not looking away from Elena. But something had changed in his expression, something calculating and dangerous. Very slowly. He released her chin and stepped back, his eyes searching her face with uncomfortable intensity. You heard that, he said softly. Didn't you? When we were talking earlier about Ferrante. Elena's mind raced. Deny it. Admit it. What would be... I heard, she said, making another choice, another leap into the dark. I heard, and I was going to... What? Call the police? Call the FBI? Admit she was federal? Going to what? Luca asked, genuinely curious now. Warn him? A federal prosecutor you've never met? Risk your life for a stranger? He has a daughter, Elena heard herself say. I've seen the pictures in the newspaper. She's 6, maybe 7. And you're going to make her grow up without a father because he did his job. The silence that followed was absolute. Marco made a noise that might have been a laugh or a growl. Enzo's expression had gone carefully blank. Dante looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. But Luca was smiling. Not a nice smile. The kind of smile a shark might wear if sharks found humor in the moment before the kill. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, he said slowly, or the stupidest. I haven't decided which yet. He glanced at Marco. Take her to the car. No. Elena stepped back, her training finally kicking in, hand moving toward the small knife she kept strapped to her thigh under her skirt for exactly this kind of... But Marco was faster and larger and had been hurting people professionally for 20 years. He had her wrist locked and her arm twisted behind her back before she could draw the weapon. The pain was immediate and spectacular. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Luca said, shrugging into his coat with the unhurried movements of someone whose evening had just gotten interesting. He dropped several $100 bills on the table, probably enough to cover the wine and the trouble. You wanted to not be invisible, Elena? Congratulations. You have my complete and undivided attention. You can't just kidnap me, Elena gasped as Marco marched her toward the door. People will notice. They'll call the police. They'll do nothing, Luca said, holding the door open as rain and cold air rushed in. Because this is my city, and you just became my problem to solve. The last thing Elena saw before Marco shoved her into the back of a black Mercedes was the restaurant's interior, warm and bright and safe, growing smaller and more distant as the car door slammed shut with the finality of a coffin lid closing. She'd sat in this restaurant for 8 months gathering intelligence, playing her role, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Instead, she'd let rage and righteousness destroy everything in 30 seconds of spectacular stupidity. So much for being invisible, she thought, as Luca slid into the seat beside her, his presence filling the confined space with barely contained danger. Drive, he told the man behind the wheel. And as the Mercedes pulled away from the curb, Elena Moretti, Special Agent Elena Moretti, realized she'd just made the biggest mistake of her career, or possibly saved a man's life, or possibly gotten herself killed. The night would tell which. The Mercedes moved through Manhattan's rain-slicked streets with the smooth confidence of money insulated from traffic laws. Elena sat rigid in the back seat, hyper-aware of Luca beside her and Marco in the front passenger seat, his bulk twisted so he could keep her in his peripheral vision. No one had bothered to bind her hands, which told her 2 things. Either they were supremely confident she posed no threat, or they wanted her cooperative for whatever came next. Neither option offered much comfort. Where are we going? Elena asked, keeping her voice level, professional. Show no fear. Fear was blood in the water. Somewhere we can talk properly, Luca said, scrolling through his phone with the distracted air of someone checking emails rather than deciding a person's fate. Away from witnesses and wine-stained tablecloths. The phone buzzed. Luca answered in Italian, his tone sharp. Salvatore. Yes, I heard about your initiative. No, I did not authorize it. No, you will not proceed. A pause. Because I'm canceling the operation, that's why. Because I said so, and last time I checked, I'm still the one making decisions. I don't care if you already paid the shooter half up front. Get the money back. Salvatore. Listen to me very carefully. If Michael Ferrante dies tomorrow morning, the next funeral will be yours. Are we clear? He ended the call with enough force to make Elena wonder if the phone would survive. You just called off a hit because I told you a prosecutor has a daughter? Elena couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. I called off a hit because one of my captains made a decision without my approval, Luca corrected, pocketing the phone. The daughter was irrelevant. Do you know what happens to organizations where subordinates think they can act independently? They fracture, they splinter, they die. How humanitarian of you, Elena muttered. Luca turned to face her fully, and in the passing streetlights his features seemed carved from shadow and stone. Don't mistake this for mercy. I'm not saving Ferrante out of the goodness of my heart. I'm saving him because the timing is wrong, the method is sloppy, and Salvatore is an ambitious idiot who needs to be reminded of his place. He paused. But you didn't know any of that when you spoke up. You just heard a man was going to die and decided to grow a conscience. Is that so surprising? In my world? Yes. The car turned off the main streets into an area Elena recognized from her briefings, Red Hook, Brooklyn. Warehouses and industrial spaces being slowly colonized by artists and hipsters, but still containing pockets of the old neighborhood, the old ways. They pulled up to a building that might have been a factory once. Brick facade, metal door, no signage. The kind of place that appeared on no maps and asked no questions. Marco got out first, scanning the street with the paranoia of someone who'd survived too many ambushes to ever be careless. Then he opened Elena's door, his meaty hand closing around her upper arm with enough pressure to make his point without leaving marks. Professional, Elena thought distantly. They've done this before. Inside, the building had been converted into something between a luxury loft and a fortress. Exposed brick and hardwood floors, expensive furniture arranged with casual wealth, but also steel doors at key points, cameras in corners, and the kind of reinforced windows that could probably stop bullets. A young woman, maybe 25, beautiful in the effortless way of models, lounged on a leather sofa, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as they entered, her eyes widening slightly at the sight of Elena. Luca, what's going on? Business, Sophia. Go upstairs. But I thought we were going to... Upstairs. Now. The woman's expression shifted from petulant to calculating, her gaze raking over Elena with the kind of assessment another woman might reserve for competition. But she stood, gathered her designer purse, and disappeared up a steel staircase without another word. Girlfriend? Wife? Elena wondered, then immediately scolded herself for caring. Luca shrugged out of his coat, tossed it over a chair, and moved to a bar that probably cost more than Elena's annual salary. Drink? I'm not really in the mood for... That wasn't a request. He poured 2 glasses of something amber and brought one to her. Whiskey, 25 years old. Drink it. Elena took the glass, her mind working through options. The front door was behind Marco. The windows were bulletproof, probably alarmed. Upstairs held at least one other person, possibly more. Her only weapon, the small knife, was still strapped to her thigh, undetected in Marco's rough search. Not great odds. She sipped the whiskey. It burned smooth and expensive down her throat, tasting like oak and thyme and money. Luca settled into an armchair across from her, studying her over the rim of his glass with the focused attention of someone solving a complex equation. So, he said finally, let's try this again. Who are you, Elena Moretti? And please, try the truth this time. I've had a long day and my tolerance for lies is approximately 0. Elena set down her glass, met his eyes directly. What makes you think I'll tell you anything? Because you're smart enough to know you have no other options. Because you're curious about why I brought you here instead of killing you. And because despite the situation, despite the danger, part of you wants to tell someone the truth. He smiled, and it was almost kind. Almost. You've been lying for a long time, haven't you? It gets exhausting. The observation hit closer to home than Elena wanted to admit. 8 months of lies, yes, but before that too. 3 years of pretending to be other people, playing other roles, living other lives. The exhaustion of it had worn grooves in her soul. I'm a waitress, she said, knowing it sounded hollow. You're a lot of things. Waitress might be one of them. But you're also someone who speaks at least 4 languages fluently. Someone who notices things. I've watched you these past months, cataloging faces, monitoring conversations. Someone who carries herself with training that doesn't come from hospitality school. He leaned forward. Military? Police? Federal? Elena's silence was answer enough. Federal, Luca concluded, nodding slowly. FBI, probably. Organized Crime Task Force would be my guess. Deep cover operation targeting my organization. He took another sip of whiskey. How am I doing so far? You seem very certain of yourself. I'm certain because you're good, but not quite good enough. Little things gave you away. The way you scan rooms, that's tactical training. The way you position yourself near exits, that's operational awareness. The way you memorized our patterns, that's professional surveillance. He paused. And the way you just confirmed everything by not denying it. Damn it. So what now? Elena asked. You kill me? Dump my body in the East River? Send a message to the FBI? That would be the traditional response, Luca agreed. And Marco would very much like me to choose that option. He's been looking for an excuse to hurt you since you ruined his suit. Then why don't you? Luca stood, moved to the window, looked out at the rain that continued to hammer against the glass. Because you did something interesting tonight. When you heard about Ferrante, when you knew you were blown anyway, you didn't run. You didn't try to save yourself. You tried to save him. That kind of integrity is rare in my world. Rare in any world, actually. So you're keeping me alive out of respect for my integrity? How noble. I'm keeping you alive because you're more useful that way, Luca corrected, turning back to face her. You want to save Ferrante? Fine, help me. Elena blinked. Help you what? Salvatore may have backed down for now, but he's ambitious and stupid, a dangerous combination. He'll try again, probably through channels I can't monitor as easily. But you have resources I don't. Federal resources. Protective detail resources. Luca crossed back to her, crouched down so they were eye level. You help me keep Ferrante alive, and I'll make sure Salvatore faces consequences that will discourage future initiatives. You want me to protect a federal prosecutor using federal resources so you can maintain control of your criminal organization? Elena couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. Do you understand how insane that sounds? Do you understand that Ferrante dies without my help? The FBI clearly hasn't prevented Salvatore from getting close enough to plan an assassination. Your protective detail has holes Salvatore has already identified, but I can close those holes. I can redirect the threat. I can keep him alive. Why do you even care if Ferrante lives or dies? Because his death right now would be... Luca paused, seemed to reconsider his words. Inconvenient. Let's leave it at that. Elena's mind raced through the implications. There was something else here, something he wasn't saying. Ferrante's death would trigger what? Federal crackdown? Gang war? Some power shift Luca wanted to avoid? And if I refuse? She asked. Then I call Salvatore back, tell him he can proceed, and you watch a man die knowing you could have prevented it. Luca stood, moved back to the bar, refreshed his drink. Your choice, Special Agent Moretti. The title hit her like a slap. He'd confirmed her identity completely, probably had people already running her background, checking her credentials, finding out everything the FBI thought they'd hidden. You're asking me to betray my oath. I'm asking you to be practical. Ferrante lives or dies. Those are the only options. Everything else, your oath, your mission, your cover, that's all secondary to keeping a federal prosecutor with a 6-year-old daughter from getting shot in the head tomorrow morning. He was right, and she hated that he was right. What exactly would you need me to do? Luca smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in it, the smile of someone who'd just won a negotiation he knew he'd win from the start. Tell me everything about Ferrante's security detail. Schedules, routes, vulnerabilities. Then make a call to your handler and tell them there's been a credible threat, that the timeline has been moved up, that they need to change his entire routine immediately. They'll want to know my source. Tell them you overheard it at the restaurant, which is true. Tell them the DeSantis organization is moving faster than anticipated. Also true. You don't have to lie, Elena. You just have to choose which truth to share. She wanted to say no, wanted to maintain the integrity he claimed to respect, wanted to be the person who didn't make deals with crime bosses to save lives. But she thought about Ferrante's daughter, thought about a 6-year-old girl who didn't know that tomorrow morning might be the last time she saw her father alive, thought about all the people who died while good people maintained their principles. Okay, Elena said quietly. I'll do it. Smart choice. Luca pulled out his phone, slid it across to her. Call your handler. Tell them what I told you to say. And Elena? He waited until she looked up at him. If you try to tell them where you are, if you try to signal for help, Marco will kill you before they can trace the call. Understand? She understood. Elena picked up the phone, dialed the number she'd memorized on her first day of deep cover training. It rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Baker's Dozen Bakery. How may I help you? I need to place an order for tomorrow morning, Elena said, using the coded language that meant urgent contact. 3 dozen red velvet cupcakes. That's a large order. When do you need them? 6 a.m. It's very urgent. A pause. Then, hold please while I check if we can accommodate that. The line clicked. 10 seconds later, a different voice came on, older, harder, carrying the weight of 20 years in federal law enforcement. Elena, report. Sir, I have credible intelligence that the Ferrante hit has been moved up. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., the cafe. You need to change his routine immediately. Source? Overheard conversation at the restaurant. The DeSantis organization. They're moving faster than we anticipated. Another pause. She could almost hear Special Agent David Morrison's mind working through the implications. Your cover? Compromised. No point lying about that. But not immediately critical. I can maintain position for a few more days if needed. Negative. If you're burned, your extraction priority. Where are you? Elena glanced at Luca, who shook his head slightly, his hand resting casually on his own phone, probably ready to end the call if she said the wrong thing. I can't say right now, but I'm safe. I need you to focus on Ferrante. Change his schedule, change his route, change everything. They know his patterns too well. Elena, please, sir, trust me on this. Ferrante first, extraction later. A longer pause. Then, understood. But I want contact every 12 hours. Miss a check-in, and we're coming for you. Yes, sir. And Elena, good work. You might have just saved a man's life. With the help of the people trying to kill him, Elena thought but didn't say. Thank you, sir. She ended the call, slid the phone back to Luca. See? He said. That wasn't so hard. You told the truth, saved a life, and didn't have to betray anyone. He raised his glass in a mock toast. To cooperation. Don't pretend this makes us allies, Elena said. Of course not. You're federal. I'm everything you've sworn to bring down. But for tonight, for tomorrow, we have aligned interests. That's something. Marco shifted by the door, his expression making clear what he thought of aligned interests with federal agents. Luca noticed. Marco, get her set up in the East Room. She's staying here tonight. Boss, did I stutter? Marco's jaw tightened, but he jerked his head toward the stairs. Come on. Elena stood, her legs stiff from tension and adrenaline. I'm a prisoner, then? You're a guest under guard, Luca corrected. There's a difference. Tomorrow, once we confirm Ferrante is safe, we'll discuss what happens next. And if he's not safe? Then we'll have bigger problems to worry about than your status. Elena followed Marco up the steel staircase, acutely aware of Luca's eyes on her back. The second floor was more industrial than the first. Exposed ductwork, concrete floors, but furnished with the same expensive taste. Marco led her to a door at the end of a hallway, unlocked it with a key from his pocket. Inside, he growled. The room was sparse but comfortable. Bed, dresser, small bathroom visible through an open door. One window, barred from the outside. The door had a lock on the exterior. Definitely a prison, no matter what Luca called it. Don't try anything stupid, Marco advised. Someone will be outside all night. You won't make it 10 feet. Noted. He left, and she heard the lock click home with brutal finality. Elena sat on the bed, her hands shaking now that no one was watching. She'd just made contact with her handler, warned them about the hit, potentially saved Ferrante's life. She'd also just committed to helping a crime boss maintain control of his organization, had used federal resources to further his agenda, had crossed a line she'd sworn never to cross. But Ferrante lives, she told herself. That's what matters. She lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how a day that started with pouring wine had ended with her locked in a room by the man she'd spent 8 months trying to destroy. Tomorrow would bring answers. Or more questions. Or possibly a bullet if Luca decided she was more trouble than she was worth. The rain continued to hammer against the barred window, and somewhere in Manhattan, a federal prosecutor slept peacefully, unaware that his life hung in the balance of a deal between a federal agent and the man trying to kill him. Elena closed her eyes and tried not to think about how thin the line between right and wrong had become, or how easily she'd stepped across it when given the right motivation. But sleep didn't come. And outside her door, she could hear footsteps pacing back and forth, someone else finding sleep equally elusive on this night when everything had changed. Dawn crept through the barred window like an unwelcome visitor, gray and cold. Elena had maybe slept 2 hours, her mind too wired with adrenaline and the weight of what she'd done. She sat up as footsteps approached her door, instinctively smoothing her hair, straightening her clothes. The same wine-stained uniform she'd worn last night at the restaurant a lifetime ago. The lock clicked. The door opened. But it wasn't Marco's bulk filling the frame. Luca stood there in dark jeans and a black sweater, looking far too awake for 6 in the morning. He carried 2 paper cups of coffee, steam rising from the lids like small promises of civilization. "You're alive," he observed, stepping inside without invitation. "That's a good start. Did you expect otherwise?" Marco suggested more permanent solutions around 3 a.m. I told him to go home and sleep it off. Luca handed her one of the coffees. "Drink. We have a lot to discuss, and I prefer my conversations caffeinated." Elena took the cup, wrapped her hands around its warmth. The coffee was good, really good, the kind that came from boutique roasters who charged criminally high prices for beans grown on specific hillsides by specific farmers. Even his morning coffee carried the weight of money and taste. "What time is it?" she asked. 6:15. Luca moved to the window, looked out at the gray Brooklyn morning. "Ferrante should be not at his usual cafe right about now. If your people listened to you." They listened. "We'll see." He pulled out his phone, typed something, waited. A response came back almost immediately. He read it, and something that might have been approval flickered across his face. Salvatore just reported that his asset at the cafe saw no sign of Ferrante, changed his routine just like you said he would. So he's safe. For now. Salvatore's livid, of course. He paid the shooter up front, and now there's no target. He's out $50,000 in his credibility. Luca pocketed the phone. He'll try again. Men like Salvatore don't accept failure gracefully. Men like you mean? I accept failure all the time, Luca said mildly. I just make sure the people responsible for it don't live to cause more. He turned from the window, studied her with those dark, calculating eyes. Which brings us to you. Lena's hand tightened on the coffee cup. I did what you asked. Ferrante's alive. We had a deal. We did, and unlike Salvatore, I honor my agreements. He gestured to the door. Come downstairs. We need to have a longer conversation, and this room is depressing. She followed him down to the main floor, where morning light filtered through industrial windows, softening the space's hard edges. The girlfriend, Sophia, was nowhere in sight. Either she'd left or was still asleep upstairs, and Elena found herself oddly relieved not to face another woman's territorial assessment this early. Luca moved to the kitchen, all stainless steel and marble countertops, the kind of kitchen that appeared in design magazines, and started pulling ingredients from the refrigerator with the ease of someone comfortable in the space. You cook? Elena asked, surprise slipping into her voice before she could stop it. My nonna insisted. Said a man who can't feed himself is a man who depends too much on others. He cracked eggs into a bowl with one hand, whisking with the other. Dependency is weakness. Is that the family motto? One of them. The eggs hit a heated pan with a satisfying sizzle. The other is never trust anyone who won't look you in the eye when they lie. You passed that test last night, by the way. I wasn't lying. No, but you were choosing which truths to share. There's an art to that. He added cheese, herbs, movements, economical, and practiced. Most people can't do it without breaking eye contact. You can. It's impressive. Elena leaned against the counter, watching him work, trying to reconcile the man making omelets with the crime boss who'd ordered hits and threatened lives. The cognitive dissonance was dizzying. Why am I really here? She asked quietly. You could have killed me last night. Could have dumped my body and let the FBI wonder what happened to their deep cover agent. Why the hospitality? Luca plated the omelets, 2 of them, perfect and golden. and carried them to a dining table that probably cost more than a car. Sit. She sat. He pushed one plate toward her, took the seat across from her, and for a moment they were just two people sharing breakfast, no different from thousands of other morning scenes playing out across the city, except for the guns, the guards, and the fact that one of them was federal and the other was felony. I'm keeping you alive because you're useful, Luca said, cutting into his omelet, and because I think we can help each other. I'm not going to be your informant. I don't want you as an informant. I want you as... He paused, seeming to search for the right word. An ally. Temporary, conditional, but necessary. Against what? Salvatore. Luca set down his fork, his expression hardening. He's been consolidating power, making alliances I didn't authorize, positioning himself to make a move against my leadership. The hit on Ferrante wasn't about removing a legal threat. It was about Salvatore proving he could act independently, that he didn't need my approval. Elena processed this, her mind automatically cataloging the information, sorting it into the mental files she'd been building for 8 months. You think he's planning a coup? I know he is. I've known for months. I've been letting him think he's being clever, letting him expose his allies, map his resources. But last night, ordering that hit without my approval, thinking he could present it as a fait accompli, that was his opening move. And I can't let it stand. So you want me to help you eliminate a rival? I want you to help me prevent a war. Luca leaned forward, intensity radiating from him like heat. If Salvatore moves against me openly, it will fracture the organization. Families will choose sides. Blood will flow. And when the dust settles, whoever's left standing will be weak enough for the other organizations to pick apart. Good, Elena said flatly. Let you all destroy each other. Makes my job easier. Does it? When Salvatore and his people start killing in the streets? When innocent people get caught in the crossfire? When your federal case collapses because all your targets are dead and the evidence dies with them? He shook his head. You've been working this case for how long? 3 years? 8 months deep cover? All of that goes away if Salvatore starts a war. Elena hated that he was right. Hated that she could see the logic, could feel the trap closing around her choices. What exactly are you proposing? Help me remove Salvatore from the equation, cleanly, quietly. No war, no collateral damage. In exchange, I'll give you something the FBI wants even more than my head on a platter. And what's that? Luca smiled, sharp and dangerous. The Camorra connection. The supply chain that brings product into the country. Names, dates, shipping routes, financial records. Everything you'd need to dismantle the entire East Coast operation. Elena's pulse kicked up. The Camorra connection was the white whale of organized crime investigation. The missing piece that would turn a good case into a legendary one. Prosecutors had been chasing it for a decade. You'd turn on your suppliers? They're not my suppliers anymore. They've been dealing with Salvatore behind my back, cutting me out of percentages, treating me like I'm yesterday's news. His jaw tightened. I don't forgive disloyalty. Not from subordinates, not from partners. So yes, I'd burn them all if it served my purpose. And your purpose is staying in power. My purpose is survival. Power is just the tool I use to achieve it. He pushed his plate aside, untouched now, all pretense of casual breakfast abandoned. Here's the situation. Salvatore is meeting with his key allies tonight. 8 p.m., a warehouse in Queens. They're going to finalize their plan to move against me. I need to know what they're planning, who's committed, how deep the betrayal goes. You want me to spy on them. I want you to infiltrate the meeting and gather intelligence. You're federal. You're trained for this. And Salvatore doesn't know you exist beyond being a waitress who overheard something she shouldn't have. Elena laughed, but it came out bitter. You think I can just walk into a meeting of mobsters and start taking notes? I think you can do exactly what you've been doing for 8 months. Be invisible, listen carefully, and report back what you learn. Luca stood, moved to a cabinet, returned with a small device the size of a button. Audio surveillance, latest technology, practically undetectable. You get it into that warehouse and we'll have everything we need. And then what? You kill them all? I handle it. How is my concern, not yours? He set the device on the table between them. You get me the intelligence, I give you the Camorra files. Everyone wins. Except the people you're going to kill. Except the people who were planning to kill me first, yes. Luca's expression held no apology, no regret. This is the world we live in, Elena. You can pretend you're separate from it, above it, but last night you made a choice. You helped me save Ferrante. You crossed the line, and now you're standing in the space between what you were and what you might become. I saved a man's life. That's different from helping you commit murder. Is it? You used federal resources to protect my interests. You lied to your handler. You're sitting in my home, drinking my coffee, negotiating terms like we're partners. He leaned back in his chair, utterly relaxed now, certain of his position. You can lie to yourself if it helps you sleep, but don't lie to me. The words hit like a physical blow because they were true. All of it was true. She had crossed the line, had made choices that couldn't be unmade. And sitting here listening to him propose murder and conspiracy, part of her was actually considering it. I need to think, Elena said. You have until noon. That's when I need an answer. Luca stood, collected the plates, even though neither of them had eaten much. Marco will take you back to your apartment. Get cleaned up, get changed, pretend you're normal for a few hours. But at noon, you call me and tell me yes or no. Those are the only options. And if I say no, then you walk away. I let you go back to your life and we pretend last night never happened. You lose the Camorra files, I handle Salvatore my way, and we both move forward with our separate agendas. It sounded too easy, too clean. You'd really just let me walk away? Luca paused in the doorway to the kitchen, looked back at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I told you last night, I respect integrity. You warned me about Ferrante not because it benefited you, but because it was right. That kind of conscience is rare. I'm not going to extinguish it just because it's inconvenient. But if I help you, if I cross that line completely, then you make a choice to be something other than what the FBI trained you to be. You become someone who operates in the gray spaces, who makes impossible decisions with incomplete information. You become, he smiled slightly, well, someone a lot like me. He disappeared into the kitchen before she could respond. Elena sat alone at the expensive table in the expensive loft, surrounded by the trappings of blood money and power, and tried to figure out who she was anymore. 20 minutes later, Marco appeared to escort her home. The drive back to Manhattan was silent, Marco's disapproval radiating from him like a physical force. He dropped her at her apartment building in Alphabet City without a word, just a look that promised violence if she made the wrong choice. Her apartment felt alien after the night in Luca's fortress. Tiny, shabby, the home of someone pretending to struggle financially while actually being funded by the federal government. She stripped off the wine-stained uniform, stood under scalding water in her cramped shower, and tried to wash away the feeling of Luca's eyes on her, the weight of his proposals, the terrible logic of his arguments, the Camorra files. If he was telling the truth, if he really had access to that intelligence, it would be the biggest organized crime bust in a decade. Careers would be made, lives would be saved. The network that funneled drugs and violence into American cities would be shattered. All she had to do was help a crime boss eliminate his rivals first. Just one compromise, she thought. One mission, one night, and then I can bring down an entire organization. Her phone buzzed. Morrison. Elena, status check. Safe. Secure. Ferrante? Changed his entire routine, just like you advised. Good call. We're treating this as an active threat. Full protection detail. How'd you get the intelligence? Elena closed her eyes, made another choice, told another lie. Overheard more than I initially reported. The conversation was detailed. They'd been planning this for weeks. Jesus, your cover's definitely burned if they were that open around you. I know. We need to extract you, today. I'm not leaving an agent in the field when the targets know she's federal. They don't know I'm federal, Elena said quickly. They know I speak Italian and I overheard something. That's different from knowing I'm FBI. Elena, sir, I think I can still be useful here. There's something bigger happening, internal conflicts, power struggles. If I can stay embedded just a little longer. Absolutely not. You've done excellent work, but I'm not risking an agent's life for diminishing returns. Extraction is happening today. Elena's mind raced. If Morrison pulled her out now, she'd lose access to Luca, to the Camorra files, to everything. She'd be just another agent who did her job and walked away with a decent but unremarkable case. What if I could give you the Camorra connection? She heard herself say. Silence on the other end. Then, explain. My source, the one who gave me the Ferrante intel, claims he has access to the entire supply chain. Names, routes, financial records, everything. Why would he give that up? Internal politics. He wants to eliminate rivals. If we help him, he'll give us the network. Another silence, longer this time. You're talking about making a deal with organized crime. I'm talking about taking down the biggest drug network on the East Coast. Isn't that worth one tactical alliance? Elena, listen to yourself. You sound like someone who's been in the field long enough to know that perfect victories don't exist. We make choices with incomplete information and hope we get more good than bad. She was arguing Luca's position now, using his logic, and the realization should have horrified her. Should have. Sir, if I walk away now, we get a decent RICO case against the DeSantis organization. If I stay, if I follow this lead, we get the Camorra. We save hundreds of lives, maybe thousands. Morrison didn't respond immediately. She could picture him in his office, wrestling with the same calculations she was making, weighing risk against reward, principle against pragmatism. What would this tactical alliance require? He asked finally. Intelligence gathering, one operation. I help verify the trustworthiness of the source. He provides the files. And if it's a trap? Then I'm no worse off than I am right now. Lie. She'd be much worse off. But Morrison didn't need to know that. I don't like it. I'm not asking you to like it, sir. I'm asking you to trust my judgment. More silence. Then, 48 hours. You have 2 days to verify this source and deliver something concrete. After that, extraction is mandatory. Understood? Yes, sir. And Elena, be careful. Whatever line you're walking, don't lose sight of which side you're supposed to be on. Too late for that, she thought, but didn't say. I won't, sir. She ended the call, looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, wet hair, tired eyes, the face of someone who'd stopped being certain about anything. The clock on her phone read 10:47. 1 hour and 13 minutes until Luca's deadline. Elena dried her hair, dressed in jeans and a sweater, made herself look like a normal person doing normal things on a normal Saturday morning. Then she called the number Luca had programmed into her phone before Marco drove her home. He answered on the first ring. Decision time already? I'm almost disappointed. I thought you'd use the full deadline. I'm in, Elena said. But I have conditions. Of course you do. Lunch? Where? You know the park? Tompkins Square? Yes? Southeast corner. 1 hour. Come alone. He hung up before she could respond. Elena grabbed her jacket, checked the small backup weapon she kept in an ankle holster, a .38 revolver, untraceable, against all FBI protocols but standard practice for deep cover agents who knew protocols couldn't save them when everything went wrong. The walk to Tompkins Square took 15 minutes. The park was crowded with the weekend faithful, dog walkers, joggers, musicians, the beautiful chaos of New York at leisure. Elena found the southeast corner, a bench near the chess tables where old men argued strategy in languages she only partially understood. Luca was already there, dressed down in jeans and a leather jacket, looking like any other neighborhood guy enjoying the morning. He had coffee again, 2 cups, because apparently that was his thing. Punctual, he said as she sat. I appreciate that. I appreciate not being followed by Marco. He's around, just not obvious. Luca handed her the coffee. You said conditions. I'm listening. Elena took a breath, steadied herself. First, I need proof you actually have the Camorra files. I'm not going into this blind on your word alone. Fair. Luca pulled out his phone, scrolled to something, handed it to her. Sample. Shipping manifests from the past 6 months. Notice the company names, the port of entry, the receiving warehouses. Elena scanned the document. Her heart rate kicked up. These were real. The level of detail, the specificity, this was intelligence that would take years to compile through normal investigation. How did you get this? I have people everywhere, some of them still loyal to me rather than Salvatore. He took the phone back. That's a fraction of what I have. You deliver tonight, I deliver the full archive tomorrow. Second condition, Elena continued, whatever happens with Salvatore, no innocent people get hurt, no collateral damage. Agreed. This is about cleaning house, not starting a war. Third, after tonight, after I give you what you need, we're done. I go back to being federal, you go back to being a target, and we pretend this alliance never happened. Luca was quiet for a moment, studying her with those dark eyes that seemed to see too much. If that's what you want, it's what needs to happen. All right. He leaned back against the bench, stretched his arms along the back in a gesture of casual dominance. Tonight, 8 p.m., warehouse in Long Island City. Address is 47-19 Vernon Boulevard. Salvatore thinks he's meeting to finalize plans. You're going to be there first, planted, listening. How do I get in? There's a woman who cleans the building, Maria Russo. She's one of mine, loyal, discreet. She'll let you in at 6, get you positioned where you can hear but not be seen. You plant the device, record the meeting, get out clean. And if they search the warehouse first, they won't. Salvatore's arrogant. He thinks his security is tight enough that he doesn't need to worry about surveillance. Luca smiled coldly. His mistake. Elena pulled out her own phone, typed the address into her notes. What happens after I deliver the recording? I handle Salvatore. You get the Camorra files. Everyone goes back to their corners. Define handle. That's not your concern. It is if I'm complicit in... You're not complicit in anything except gathering intelligence, which is literally your job. Luca's voice hardened slightly. I'm not asking you to pull the trigger, Elena. I'm asking you to listen and report. What I do with that information afterward is on me. It was a thin line, barely visible, but it was still a line. Elena could tell herself she was just doing surveillance, just gathering evidence, that whatever happened afterward was Luca's responsibility, not hers. She could tell herself that. Whether she'd believe it was another question. Okay, she said finally. 6 p.m. I'll be there. Maria will be waiting. She'll know you're coming. Luca stood, dropped his empty coffee cup in a nearby trash can. And Elena, thank you. For what? For being interesting. Most people bore me. You don't. He walked away before she could respond, disappearing into the weekend crowd like he'd never been there at all. Elena sat alone on this bench, surrounded by the normal world doing normal things, and wondered how she'd gotten here, sitting in a park, planning surveillance on mobsters at the request of another mobster, lying to her handler, lying to herself. Just one more operation, she thought, one more night, and then I can go back to being who I'm supposed to be. But deep down, in a place she didn't want to examine too closely, Elena suspected that ship had already sailed. The person she'd been before last night, the one who saw the world in clear lines of right and wrong, was gone. And whoever she was becoming sat in her place, drinking expensive coffee, making deals with devils, and trying not to think too hard about how easily it had all happened. She had 9 hours until the meeting, 9 hours to prepare, to plan, to convince herself this was still salvageable, 9 hours until she stepped fully into the darkness and found out if she could still find her way back to the light. The warehouse at 47-19 Vernon Boulevard looked like 1,000 other industrial buildings in Long Island City. Brick facade crumbling at the edges, windows either broken or painted black, the kind of place where businesses came to die quietly. Elena arrived at 5:40, 20 minutes early, her nerves singing with the familiar pre-operation tension that felt like ice water in her veins. A woman waited near the service entrance, short and round, maybe 60, wearing a cleaning company uniform that had seen better decades. She looked up as Elena approached, her weathered face showing no surprise, no curiosity, just the blank acceptance of someone who'd learned long ago not to ask questions. You the one Luca sent? Her accent was thick, old country Italian softened by years in New York. Yes. Maria Russo. She produced a keyring that could have doubled as a weapon. Come. We don't have much time. Inside, the warehouse smelled of dust and motor oil and decades of abandonment. Maria led her through a maze of empty spaces and forgotten equipment, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous silence. Weak light filtered through the blacked-out windows, creating shadows that moved when Elena didn't want them to. Here, Maria stopped at what looked like a ventilation shaft near the ceiling of the main floor. A rusted ladder led up to a maintenance platform obscured by shadow. You can see everything from up there. They won't know you're watching. Elena tested the ladder. It held, barely. How long have you worked for Luca? Long enough to know when not to ask questions. Maria's eyes were kind but firm. You be careful, girl. Men like Salvatore, they don't forgive witnesses. I'll be careful. Luca, he's a good man. Better than his father, better than most in this business. But this life, Maria shook her head, it takes pieces from you. Little pieces you don't notice until you look in the mirror one day and don't recognize what's looking back. Elena thought about her reflection this morning, the stranger wearing her face. I know. Maria squeezed her hand once, quick and warm, then disappeared back into the shadows. Elena waited until the service entrance clicked shut before climbing the ladder, each rung protesting her weight with sounds that seemed impossibly loud in the empty space. The platform was exactly as advertised, perfect sightline to the main floor below, obscured enough that someone would have to know to look for her. Elena planted the surveillance device Luca had given her in a crack in the concrete wall where it would capture audio from the entire floor. Then she settled in to wait, her service weapon pressed against her spine, her backup piece cold against her ankle, and tried not to think about how many laws she was breaking. Federal agent conducting unsanctioned surveillance, federal agent working with organized crime, federal agent withholding information from her superiors. The list kept growing, each item another nail in the coffin of her career if this went wrong. Voices outside. 7:40. Early. Elena pressed herself flatter against the platform, controlling her breathing the way they'd taught her at Quantico, becoming invisible through stillness. The main door rolled open with a shriek of protesting metal. Salvatore Russo entered first, no relation to Maria, Elena had checked, followed by 4 men she recognized from surveillance photos. Anthony Messina, enforcer, suspected in at least 8 murders. Vincent Carbone, moneyman, master of offshore accounts and creative bookkeeping. Frank DeLuca, union boss, controlled the ports. And bringing up the rear, Paolo Giordano, the connection to the Camorra, the man who could make or break the entire supply chain. They were the core of Salvatore's power base. If they were all here, this meeting was exactly what Luca had predicted. Check the perimeter, Salvatore ordered, and Elena's heart stopped as 2 of the men split off, flashlights cutting through the darkness. They weren't supposed to search. Luca said they wouldn't search. She watched the flashlight beams sweep across walls, behind equipment, methodical and thorough. One of them was coming toward her ladder. Elena's hand moved to her weapon, calculating angles, exit strategies, the mathematics of survival. If they found her, if they came up, the flashlight beam hit the ladder, traveled up its length, stopped just below the platform. See anything? Salvatore called. Dust and rust. Place is clear. The beam moved away. The man rejoined the group. Elena released the breath she'd been holding, her hand shaking now, adrenaline dump making her fingers tingle. Below, Salvatore took center position like an actor hitting his mark. He was younger than Luca, maybe 30, with the kind of gym-built physique that spoke of vanity rather than real strength. His suit was expensive but flashy, the kind that screamed new money trying to announce itself. Gentlemen, he began, his voice carrying that particular pitch of ambition mixed with insecurity. Thank you for coming. I know the hour is unusual, the location less than comfortable, but what we discuss tonight requires absolute privacy. We're here, Sal. Anthony Messina sounded bored. Get to the point. The point is Luca DeSantis has become a liability. He's weak, indecisive. He canceled the Ferrante hit, cost us 50 grand and our credibility. He's cautious, Vincent Carbone corrected. There's a difference. Cautious is another word for scared, and scared men don't lead. They get replaced. Salvatore paced as he spoke, energy radiating from him like heat. How many opportunities have we lost because Luca wanted to think it through? How many deals died because he was too careful, too concerned with tradition and honor and all that old-world bullshit his father taught him? Frank DeLuca crossed his arms. That old-world bullshit kept us alive and profitable for 20 years. 20 years of playing it safe while the Russians expand, while the Albanians take territory, while everyone else grows and we maintain. Salvatore's voice rose. I'm tired of maintaining. I want to expand. I want what's ours. And how do you propose we take it? Paolo Giordano asked quietly. He was older than the others, maybe 50, with the calm of someone who'd survived decades by being smarter than the men around him. Luca has loyal people. Marco, Enzo, Dante, they won't just accept new leadership. They will when they see Luca can't protect them. Salvatore pulled out his phone, displayed something to the group. This is Luca's distribution network. Every warehouse, every drop point, every connection, I've been mapping it for 6 months. Elena's mind raced, committing details to memory, wishing she could photograph the screen from this distance. You're talking about hitting his operations, Anthony said, and now he sounded interested, creating chaos to make him look weak. I'm talking about systematic dismantling. We hit 3 locations simultaneously. Take the product, burn the warehouses, eliminate his local contacts. By the time he knows what's happening, he's lost 1/3 of his capacity. Salvatore was warming to his pitch now, selling it like a hostile takeover. Then we offer his remaining people a choice. Join us or go down with him. And if Luca retaliates? Vincent asked. Against what? We make it look like the Albanians. They've been pushing into Queens anyway. Luca will think it's territorial conflict, maybe even try to negotiate peace while we position for the final move. Which is? Paolo's voice remained neutral, giving nothing away. We take him out. Clean. Professional. Make it look like natural causes, or better yet, like he ran. Disappeared with money and a new identity. No martyrdom, no war, just an ending that lets everyone move forward. The warehouse fell silent, except for the wind rattling loose panels somewhere in the darkness. Elena's finger hovered over the record button on her phone, capturing every word, every nuance. When? Anthony finally asked. 3 days. Wednesday night. His operations are lightly guarded midweek. We hit fast, hit hard, disappear before anyone knows what happened. The Camorra needs to approve this, Paolo said carefully. We have agreements with Luca, contracts. You can't just... The Camorra wants product moved efficiently and payments made on time. They don't care who's in charge as long as business continues. Salvatore moved closer to Paolo, his posture aggressive. Unless you're having second thoughts about our arrangement. I'm having thoughts about sustainability. Luca is stable, predictable. You're... Paolo gestured vaguely. Ambitious. Ambition makes people careless. Ambition makes people rich. Stability makes them obsolete. Salvatore turned to address the full group. I need to know right now. Are you with me, or should I find men with more vision? The silence stretched. Elena could feel the weight of the moment, could see each man calculating odds, weighing loyalty against opportunity, fear against greed. Anthony spoke first. I'm in. Luca's been sidelining me anyway. Time for new leadership. Vincent nodded slowly. The numbers work, if you can pull it off. Frank took longer, his face working through visible conflict. Luca's father gave me my first real job, gave me respect when no one else would. And you've paid that debt 1,000 times over, Salvatore said softly, dangerously. Question is, are you going to die for it? I'm in, Frank said finally, the words coming out like broken glass. But if this goes wrong, if it turns into a war, it won't. Trust me. Salvatore turned to Paolo. And you? Does the Camorra stand with us? Paolo was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he pulled out his own phone, typed something, waited. A response came back. He read it and nodded. The Camorra will support new leadership on one condition. The transition must be clean. No public violence, no attention from law enforcement. Luca disappears. You take over. Business continues without disruption. Done. Salvatore's smile was pure triumph. Wednesday night, gentlemen. Wednesday night, we become something new. They talked for another 20 minutes, hammering out details, assigning responsibilities, building the architecture of betrayal. Elena recorded it all, her phone growing warm in her hand, her mind automatically organizing information into actionable intelligence. This was bigger than she'd thought. Not just a coup, but a coordinated assault on Luca's entire operation. 3 warehouses, dozens of contacts, millions in product. If Salvatore pulled this off, Luca would be finished. And these men were planning his murder like they were planning a business merger. Finally, the meeting ended. They filed out the way they'd come, Salvatore's voice carrying across the warehouse about drinks at some club in Manhattan, celebrating before the work began. Elena waited until she heard the last car pull away before moving. Her muscles screamed from staying motionless for over an hour, her legs cramping as she climbed down the ladder. She retrieved the surveillance device, pocketed it along with her phone, and made her way to the service entrance Maria had shown her. The night air hit her like a blessing. She walked 3 blocks before calling Luca, her hands shaking with adrenaline and something else. The knowledge of what she'd just witnessed, what she was about to set in motion. He answered immediately. You get it? All of it, every word. Where are you? Vernon Boulevard, heading toward the subway. Stay there. I'm sending a car. Luca, I need to tell you, not over the phone. Wait for the car. He hung up. Elena leaned against a building, suddenly exhausted, the weight of the night pressing down on her like physical force. She'd done it. Gathered the intelligence. Fulfilled her end of the bargain. Now came the hard part. A black sedan pulled up 12 minutes later. Not Marco this time, but a younger guy, nervous energy vibrating from him. Boss wants you at the house. The drive took 30 minutes through Saturday night traffic. Elena stared out the window at the city sliding past. Normal people doing normal things, hitting bars and restaurants, living lives uncomplicated by moral compromise and tactical alliances with criminals. She envied them. The Brooklyn loft felt different this time. More guards visible, tension thick enough to taste. Luca was waiting in the main room, Enzo and Dante flanking him, their expressions grim. Talk, Luca said without preamble. Elena pulled out her phone, played the recording, watched their faces as Salvatore's voice filled the room, outlining betrayal in clinical detail. When it finished, the silence was absolute. Wednesday, Enzo said finally. 3 locations simultaneously. He's been planning this for months, Dante added. The detail, the coordination, the Camorra backing, Luca interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. Paolo's switching sides. You knew he might, Enzo said carefully. Knowing and hearing are different things. Luca turned to Elena. The surveillance device? You placed it? Yes, and I have video of everyone who attended. Faces, timestamps, everything you need. Send it to Enzo. He'll verify identities, cross-reference with our intelligence. Luca moved to the bar, poured himself whiskey with hands that were perfectly steady. You did excellent work tonight. So we're done? You have what you need? I get the Camorra files? Luca took a long drink before answering. We're done when I say we're done. And right now we have a new problem. Elena's stomach dropped. We had a deal. The deal was you provide intelligence on Salvatore's meeting. You did. Congratulations. But the intelligence revealed a threat larger than anticipated. 3 coordinated attacks, Camorra backing, half my inner circle compromised. He set down the glass. I need more than information now. I need action. No, absolutely not. I'm not. Salvatore is planning to frame the Albanians for the warehouse hits. That means there's going to be retaliation. Albanian operations will strike back at what they think are my locations. Innocents will die. Collateral damage. War. That's not my problem. It became your problem when you walked into that warehouse. Luca's voice hardened. You want the Camorra files? You want to take down the biggest drug network on the East Coast? Then you help me prevent a war that will destroy any chance of bringing them to justice. What are you asking? I'm asking you to help me remove Salvatore and his co-conspirators before Wednesday. Quietly. Permanently. No war, no collateral damage, no innocent people caught in the crossfire. Elena laughed, but it came out wrong. You're asking me to help you commit murder. Multiple murders. I'm federal, Luca. I can't. You can arrest them, Enzo interjected quietly. You're FBI. You have evidence of conspiracy to commit murder, drug trafficking, racketeering. You could take them all down legally. It was a lifeline, and Elena grabbed for it. Yes, exactly. I turn over the recording. The FBI raids Salvatore's operation. Everyone goes to prison. Problem solved. And what about the Albanians? Dante asked. Salvatore's people will still think they can pin the warehouse attacks on them. You arrest Salvatore. His lieutenants might still carry out the plan independently. Or worse, they'll go to ground, and you'll never find them. We'll find them. Before Wednesday? Before they trigger a gang war? Luca shook his head. You're smart, Elena. Don't pretend you don't see the problem. Legal solutions take time. Time we don't have. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to find the flaw in his logic, but he was right. Even if she turned over the evidence tonight, it would take days to get warrants, coordinate raids, move on Salvatore's operation. Wednesday was 3 days away. "What exactly are you proposing?" she heard herself ask. "Help me identify all of Salvatore's assets, locations, contacts, resources. Then help me move against them before they can move against me. We dismantle his network, neutralize his allies, and make sure Wednesday never happens." By killing them. By removing the threat. How that happens is my concern, not yours. Luca moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the enclosed space. "You keep drawing this line between legal and illegal, right and wrong. But the real line is between necessary and unnecessary. Is it necessary to stop Salvatore? Yes. Is it necessary to prevent a war? Yes. Everything else is details. Murder isn't a detail. Neither is the body count from a gang war. Neither are the innocent people who'll die when the Albanians start shooting at anyone they think is associated with my organization. You want to preserve your moral purity? Fine, walk away. But don't pretend that's the righteous choice. It's just the comfortable one." The words hit like punches. Elena thought about Ferrante's daughter, about all the calculations she'd already made, all the lines she'd already crossed. One more night, one more operation, one more compromise. Where did it end? "The Camorra files," she said. "I want them first, before I help with anything else." Luca studied her for a long moment, then nodded to Dante. "Show her." Dante pulled out a laptop, typed in passwords, navigated through folders, the screen filled with documents, shipping manifests, financial records, encrypted communications, organizational charts, years of intelligence, the kind that would take a task force a decade to compile. "Sample," Dante said. "The full archive is 40 gigabytes. Names, dates, routes, everything." Elena's hand shook as she scrolled through the files. This was real. This was the holy grail of organized crime investigation. With this, the FBI could dismantle the entire network, cut off the supply at the source, save thousands of lives. All she had to do was help Luca first. "I need to think," she said. "You have 1 hour," Luca replied. "After that, I move forward with or without you. Your choice is whether you're part of the solution or just another witness to the problem." Elena found herself in the same room as last night. The door unlocked this time, but guards visible in the hallway. A prison with the illusion of freedom. She sat on the bed, her phone in her hands. Morrison's number pulled up on the screen. One call. That's all it would take. Tell Morrison everything, trigger the emergency protocols, have FBI SWAT teams descending on this location within the hour. But then Salvatore would hear about it, would accelerate his timeline, or go to ground. The Camorra files would disappear. Wednesday's attacks might still happen, just differently, more chaotically. And Luca would be arrested, his organization fractured, creating exactly the power vacuum that would trigger the war he was trying to prevent. Elena thought about integrity, about the person she'd been trained to be, about the oath she'd sworn to uphold the law. Then she thought about the law's limitations, about how many people would die while she maintained her principles, about the difference between what was right and what was necessary. The hour passed. She went downstairs. Luca was waiting, reading something on his tablet, perfectly relaxed like he already knew what she'd decided. "I'll help," Elena said. "But I have conditions. Real ones this time." "I'm listening." "No unnecessary deaths. We target only the people actively involved in the conspiracy. Everyone else walks." "Agreed." "I get the Camorra files first, tonight. Full archive, not just samples." "Done. Enzo will transfer them to a secure drive before you leave. And after this is over, after Salvatore is handled, we're finished. You keep your empire, I bring down the Camorra, and we never speak again." Luca stood, crossed to her, extended his hand. "Deal." Elena looked at his hand for a long moment before taking it. His grip was firm, warm, the handshake of a man who kept his word even when everything else about him was built on lies. "So what now?" she asked. "Now we plan. Salvatore has 4 key allies, 3 warehouse locations, and 2 days before everything goes to hell. We need to move fast, move smart, and make sure when Wednesday comes, Salvatore is in no position to hurt anyone." How do we do that? Luca smiled, sharp and dangerous and alive with the kind of intensity that made Elena understand how he'd built an empire in the first place. We do what you do best, Agent Moretti. We investigate. We gather evidence. We build our case. His smile widened. And then we execute. The word hung in the air between them, loaded with double meaning, heavy with implication. Elena had crossed so many lines already that one more barely registered. She was past the point of no return, falling into the darkness, and the only question left was whether she'd land on her feet or shatter on impact. "Let's get started," she said, and tried not to hear the finality in her own voice, the sound of doors closing behind her that would never open again. Luca's eyes gleamed with something that might have been respect or might have been triumph. "Welcome to the other side, Elena. I think you're going to be surprised how much you fit here." And as Enzo spread maps and files across the table, as Dante started making calls to verify intelligence, as the machinery of calculated violence began to move, Elena realized Luca might be right. The thought terrified her, but not as much as the part of her that was already strategizing, already calculating, already thinking like the person she'd sworn she'd never become. The maps spread across Luca's table told a story of empire. Red pins for Salvatore's locations, blue for loyal operations, yellow for disputed territory. Elena studied them with the trained eye of someone who'd spent years analyzing criminal networks, except now she was on the wrong side of the analysis, or maybe the right side, depending on who was asking. "Anthony Messina controls the Brooklyn docks," Enzo said, tapping a cluster of red pins. "He's got 20 men, maybe 30, loyal to Salvatore because Luca passed him over for promotion last year. My father always said Anthony was too violent, too unpredictable," Luca replied, his voice carrying no emotion. "I agreed. Salvatore promised him what I wouldn't." "Vincent Carbone keeps the books clean," Dante continued, sliding financial documents across the table. "Money laundering through a dozen shell corporations. Without him, Salvatore can't move cash. And Frank DeLuca gives them union access," Elena added, surprising herself with how easily she fell into the rhythm of tactical planning. "Control the docks, control the supply chain. Paolo Giordano is the real problem." Luca's finger landed on a location in Queens. "He's the Camorra connection. Without him, Salvatore has no product to move. But he's also untouchable. Killing a Camorra representative would start a war we can't win." "So we don't kill him," Elena heard herself say. "We discredit him. Make the Camorra think he's stealing from them." 3 pairs of eyes turned to her. "Explain," Luca said. Elena's mind raced, federal training merging with criminal strategy in ways that should have horrified her. Paolo agreed to back Salvatore because he thinks the transition will be clean, profitable, low risk. But what if it's not? What if evidence surfaces that Paolo's been skimming percentages, that he's playing both sides, that he can't be trusted? "The Camorra would recall him," Dante said slowly, understanding dawning. "Replace him with someone who doesn't have Salvatore's ear. And without Paolo, Salvatore loses his supply chain and his Camorra backing." Enzo nodded. "Smart. How do we manufacture the evidence?" "We don't manufacture it," Elena said, her voice steady despite the racing of her pulse. "We find the real evidence. Men who skim always leave traces. Bank accounts, cash houses, lifestyle expenses that don't match declared income. We dig, we find it, we make sure the right people see it." Luca was smiling now, that dangerous smile that made him look like a fallen angel contemplating redemption through violence. "You're good at this. I've been investigating criminals for 5 years. The methods don't change just because—" She stopped, not wanting to finish that sentence. "Just because you're working with one instead of against one," Luca finished for her. "The truth is uncomfortable, isn't it? How easily the skills transfer." Elena wanted to argue, but he was right. Everything she'd learned about dismantling criminal organizations was now being used to preserve one. The cognitive dissonance was dizzying. "What about the others?" she asked instead. "Anthony, Vincent, Frank, how do we handle them?" "Anthony's easy," Enzo said with the casual tone of someone discussing pest control. "He's been running protection rackets without kicking up proper percentages. We have evidence. We arrange for him to have an accident that looks like retaliation from one of his victims." "No," Elena's voice was sharp. "No unnecessary deaths. We agreed. Anthony Messina has killed 8 people that we know of, Enzo replied coldly. Probably more. He's not innocent. Neither are you, but I'm not suggesting we kill you. Elena turned to Luca. We had a deal. Only people actively threatening lives. Anthony's a criminal, but that doesn't mean... She's right. Luca cut off Enzo's objection. We arrest Anthony. Anonymous tip to the FBI about his protection rackets, his murder involvement. Let the law handle him. Since when do you trust the law? Enzo demanded. Since I have a federal agent at my table who can make sure the tip is acted on immediately. Luca's eyes met Elena's. Can you do that? Could she? Feed her own agency information that would help a crime boss eliminate his rivals? Use federal resources to further Luca's agenda while telling herself it was justice? Yes, Elena said quietly. I can do that. Then Anthony gets arrested. Vincent, too. I'm sure the FBI would love detailed evidence of his money laundering operation. Luca leaned back, considering. That leaves Frank DeLuca. Frank's the weak link, Dante observed. You heard the recording. He didn't want to betray you. Salvatore forced his hand. Fear is a powerful motivator, Luca agreed, but so is loyalty, when properly reminded. Frank's daughter is getting married next month. Beautiful ceremony planned, expensive, and I've been invited. Elena watched the calculation play across his face, the subtle machinery of manipulation turning. You're going to threaten his family? She asked. I'm going to remind him that I've been part of his family for years, that I gave him opportunities when no one else would, that gratitude should mean something. Luca's smile was cold. And if gentle reminder doesn't work, then yes, I'll suggest that beautiful weddings can have unfortunate accidents if the father of the bride makes poor decisions. That's extortion. That's business. Frank gets to choose. Stay loyal to a man who's using him, or remember who actually gave him a life worth protecting. Luca stood, moved to the window. The difference between me and Salvatore is I don't force loyalty. I earn it, and I reward it. Frank forgot that. I'm just going to help him remember. The plan was taking shape now, edges becoming clear, the architecture of calculated destruction building itself from their conversation. Elena should have been horrified, should have been planning her extraction, her report to Morrison, her testimony at the trials that would put everyone in this room away for decades. Instead, she was thinking about how to make the plan work better. When do we move? She asked. Tomorrow night. We hit them all simultaneously. Fed Paolo's evidence to the Camorra, arrest Anthony and Vincent through your FBI channels, remind Frank where his loyalties should lie. By Tuesday morning, Salvatore wakes up to find his entire support structure collapsed. Luca turned from the window, which leaves just him. And what happens to Salvatore? Elena already knew the answer, but she needed to hear him say it. Salvatore gets what he deserves. A reckoning for betrayal, for threatening everything my father built, for thinking ambition trumps loyalty. Luca's voice was quiet, deadly. I'll handle him personally. You mean you'll kill him personally? I mean I'll remove a threat that can't be contained any other way. Salvatore's too ambitious, too reckless. Arrest him. He'll make deals, flip on everyone, cause chaos. Let him live, he'll try again. There's only one permanent solution. Elena knew he was right. Hated that she knew it. Hated that the logic was inescapable. Salvatore couldn't be allowed to live, not if they wanted to prevent the war, not if they wanted to end this cleanly. But that didn't make it right, didn't make it legal, didn't make it anything except murder. I can't be part of that, she said finally. Help with the rest, yes. But Salvatore, that's where I draw the line. Understood. Luca's acceptance was immediate. No argument, no pressure. You'll be elsewhere when it happens. Plausible deniability. When the FBI investigates Salvatore's disappearance, you'll have been working your case against the Camorra, following leads from the files I gave you. Completely separate. It was a gift, she realized. He was offering her an exit, a way to maintain the fiction that she wasn't complicit in murder. The fact that it was a comfortable lie didn't make it less necessary. The files, Elena said. I want them tonight, before we do anything else. Enzo produced a hard drive from a locked cabinet, sleek black device the size of a deck of cards. 40 gigabytes. Encrypted. Password is... He paused, glanced at Luca. Dante's Inferno. Capital D, capital Y, no space. Luca's smile was sardonic. Seemed appropriate. Elena took the drive, felt its weight in her palm like a promise or a threat. This was everything she'd worked for, the case that would define her career, the intelligence that could save thousands of lives. All purchased with compromise and collaboration with the man she was supposed to destroy. "Thank you," she said, and meant it, which somehow made it worse. "Don't thank me yet. We still have work to do." Luca checked his watch. Elegant, probably cost more than Elena's car. "It's almost midnight. You should get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be complicated." I should go home. My apartment is being watched by Salvatore's people. He's paranoid, remember? Probably has someone checking on anyone who might have overheard his conversation at the restaurant. Luca's tone was matter-of-fact. "You're safer here." Elena wanted to argue, but exhaustion was catching up with her, adrenaline finally wearing off. And he was probably right about the surveillance. Salvatore would be covering his bases, watching for threats. "Fine, but I need to check in with my handler tomorrow. He'll expect a status update. Tell him you're following leads on the Camorra case, which is true, just not the whole truth." Luca gestured toward the stairs. "Same room as last night. Enzo will wake you at 7. Elena climbed the stairs, the hard drive feeling like lead in her pocket. Proof of her betrayal made physical and undeniable. The room was exactly as she'd left it: bed, dresser, barred window overlooking the Brooklyn night. She sat on the bed, pulled out her phone, stared at Morrison's number. One call. That's all it would take. Tell him everything, burn Luca's operation, arrest everyone in this building, return to being the person she was supposed to be instead of whatever she was becoming. But then Salvatore would win by default. The war would happen. The Camorra connection would disappear. Everything she'd sacrificed would be for nothing. Elena put the phone away without calling. She lay back on the bed, fully dressed, the hard drive pressed against her ribs, and tried to remember the last time she'd made a decision she was completely certain was right. Days ago? Weeks? Before she'd walked into that restaurant and decided to answer Luca's insult in Italian, destroying 8 months of careful cover and 30 seconds of reckless pride? Sleep came eventually, fitful and populated with dreams of choices unmade and lines uncrossed, alternate versions of herself living cleaner lives in clearer worlds. Morning arrived with Enzo's knock at exactly 7 a.m. Elena washed her face in the small bathroom, ran her fingers through her hair, tried to make herself presentable. The face in the mirror looked tired, haunted, belonging to someone who'd aged years and days. Downstairs, the war room had evolved overnight. More maps, more photographs, more evidence of the machinery turning. Luca sat at the table with coffee and a tablet, looking like he'd never slept, though his clothes were fresh and his eyes were sharp. "Morning," he said. "Coffee's fresh. Dante picked up bagels if you're hungry." The domestic normalcy of it was surreal. Crime boss offering breakfast like they were colleagues in a normal office, planning a normal day. Elena poured coffee, took a bagel she didn't want, sat down across from him. "What's the plan?" Paolo first. The Camorra moves slowly, but once they see the evidence of his skimming, they'll recall him within 48 hours. Enzo's already prepared the documentation, bank records, wire transfers, lifestyle expenses. It'll arrive at their regional office in Naples by noon. "How do you have access to Camorra communications?" "I have access to everything that matters." Luca's smile was brief. "What I don't have is time. Every hour we wait gives Salvatore another hour to prepare, so we move fast." "What about Anthony and Vincent?" "Your turn. You'll need to make 2 calls to your FBI contacts. Anonymous tips with enough detail that they can't ignore them. Anthony's protection rackets, Vincent's money laundering. Can you do that without compromising yourself?" Elena thought about it. Anonymous tips happened constantly. Confidential informants, concerned citizens, criminals turning on each other. As long as she used a burner phone, kept the information general enough, didn't reveal operational details she couldn't know from her cover. "Yes, I can do that." "Good. Make the calls this morning. By tonight, Anthony and Vincent will be in federal custody. Frank gets his reminder this afternoon. I'm having lunch with him, just the 2 of us. Old friends reconnecting." The way Luca said it made clear how that conversation would end. "And Salvatore?" "Tomorrow night, Tuesday. after his support structure collapses, but before he can react effectively. He'll be vulnerable, isolated, desperate. That's when I move. Elena set down her coffee, looked him directly in the eye. I don't want to know the details. You don't need to know them. You'll be at your apartment, working the Kimura case, completely uninvolved. Luca paused. When the FBI eventually investigates Salvatore's disappearance, they'll find evidence of his conspiracy to murder me. They'll conclude he ran, or that his co-conspirators turned on him. Either way, the investigation will hit dead ends. You've thought this through. I've thought about nothing else for 6 months. Salvatore's betrayal didn't surprise me. I've been preparing for this endgame since the moment I realized he was positioning against me. You just accelerated the timeline. Lucky me, Elena muttered. Luca's expression softened slightly, something almost like sympathy flickering across his features. I know this isn't easy for you. Know you're compromising everything you believe in. If there was another way, but there isn't, Elena finished. You've made sure of that. The circumstances made sure of that. I'm just working with what exists. He stood, moved to the window again. It seemed to be his thinking position. You could still walk away, you know. Turn me in, let the FBI handle everything their way, accept the consequences. And watch people die while the bureaucracy grinds along? Probably. But you'd have your integrity intact. Elena thought about integrity, about the oath she'd sworn, about the person she'd been trained to be. Then she thought about Ferrante's daughter, about innocent people caught in gang wars, about the Kimura victims whose lives could be saved with the intelligence on the hard drive in her pocket. Integrity is expensive, she said finally. Sometimes too expensive to maintain. Now you're thinking like a survivor. Luca turned from the window. Make your calls, I'll handle Frank. Tonight we confirm that everything's in motion, and tomorrow we end this, Elena finished. Tomorrow we end this, Luca agreed. Elena used a burner phone Enzo provided, making the calls from a coffee shop 3 blocks away, surrounded by the beautiful mundane chaos of Sunday morning in Brooklyn. The first call to the FBI's tip line took 7 minutes, detailing Anthony Messina's protection rackets with enough specificity to trigger immediate action. The second call, to a different number, laid out Vincent Carbone's money laundering operation with the kind of precision that could only come from insider knowledge. Both times, the operators tried to keep her on the line, tried to get more information, tried to identify her. Both times she ended the call and destroyed the phone. By noon, she knew federal teams were already mobilizing, getting warrants, preparing raids. Anthony and Vincent would be in custody by dinner. Elena made one more call, this time to Morrison, using her regular phone. Elena, status? I'm following up on the Kimura leads. The intelligence is good. Really good. I think we have a case that goes all the way to their European operations. That's excellent work. When can you bring me the full package? Few more days. I want to verify sources, make sure everything's solid. Be careful, you've been out of pocket a lot lately. If you need extraction, I'm fine, sir. Just working leads. I'll check in tomorrow. She ended the call before he could ask more questions, before the lies became too elaborate to maintain. Then she walked back to the loft, the morning sunshine feeling wrong somehow, too bright for the darkness she was planning. Luca returned that evening, his expression grim. Frank saw reason. He'll withdraw his support from Salvatore, claim he was coerced, beg forgiveness. I've accepted his apology. How convincing were you? Elena asked. I showed him photos of his daughter, reminded him that beautiful things are fragile, that accidents happen to people who forget their loyalties. He understood. Luca poured himself a drink, offered her one. He'll call Salvatore tonight, tell him he's out. One more piece removed from the board. And Anthony and Vincent? FBI arrested them 3 hours ago. Multiple charges. They'll be in federal custody for weeks before they even see a bail hearing. Luca raised his glass. Your anonymous tips were very effective. Elena took the drink he offered, felt the whiskey burn down her throat like penance. So now there's just Salvatore. Just Salvatore, Luca agreed. Alone, unsupported, vulnerable. Tomorrow night, I'll arrange a meeting, someplace quiet. We'll discuss his future, or lack thereof. I don't want to know where or when. You won't. You'll be home, working your case, completely clean. He studied her over the rim of his glass. After tomorrow, this is over. You get the Kimura, I get my empire back, and we go our separate ways like we agreed. Why do you keep emphasizing that? Elena asked. That we're going separate ways. Luca was quiet for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Because I think part of you doesn't want to go. And that terrifies you more than anything else that's happened. The observation landed like a punch. Elena wanted to deny it, to insist that of course she wanted to return to her normal life, her normal cases, her normal certainty about right and wrong. But the lie wouldn't come. This isn't who I am, she said instead, hearing how weak it sounded. Maybe not who you were, Luca replied gently, but who you're becoming. That's still being decided. Elena stood abruptly, unable to sit with that truth any longer. I should go. My apartment is still being watched, but less carefully now that Salvatore's world is collapsing. Marco will drive you home. Stay there tomorrow, work your case. Don't make contact with anyone in my organization. When it's over, I'll send the confirmation. Then we're done. She should have felt relieved. Should have felt grateful for the exit he was providing. Instead, she felt something closer to loss. Marco drove her home in silence, watching her in the rearview mirror with undisguised contempt. He'd made his opinion clear. Federal agents couldn't be trusted. Alliances with law enforcement were temporary at best. Elena would betray them all eventually. Maybe he was right. Her apartment felt foreign, the home of someone she used to be. Elena locked the door, checked her weapon, then sat on her couch and stared at the hard drive containing 40 gigabytes of career-making evidence. This was what she'd wanted, what she'd worked for. Justice, accountability, the power to dismantle an organization that destroyed lives for profit. All she'd had to do was help a crime boss commit murder to get it. Elena's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered carefully. Agent Moretti? The voice was unfamiliar, male, carrying an accent she couldn't place. Who is this? Someone who knows about your arrangement with Luca DeSantis. Someone who knows what you've been doing. And someone who thinks you should know, tomorrow night, when Luca meets with Salvatore, there will be federal agents waiting. Salvatore made a deal. He's turning state's evidence in exchange for witness protection. Everyone in that room tomorrow will be arrested, including you, if you're there. The line went dead. Elena sat frozen, her mind racing through implications. Salvatore had flipped, was cooperating with federal prosecutors. The meeting tomorrow was a trap, designed to catch Luca in the act of attempted murder. If she warned Luca, she'd be obstructing justice, interfering with a federal operation, crossing a line she could never uncross. If she didn't warn him, Luca would be arrested. His organization would collapse. The power vacuum would trigger exactly the war they'd been trying to prevent. And Salvatore would walk free, protected by the government, winning through betrayal. Elena pulled out her phone, Luca's number already highlighted on the screen. One call. That's all it would take. Warn him, save him, condemn herself completely. Or say nothing. Let him walk into the trap. Return to being the person she was supposed to be, even if that person lived with the knowledge that she'd stood by while the FBI arrested a man who trusted her. Her finger hovered over the call button. Outside, the city moved through its rhythms, oblivious to the choice being made in this small apartment, the decision that would determine not just Luca's fate, but her own. Elena closed her eyes, thought about integrity and compromise, about the difference between right and necessary, about who she'd been and who she was becoming. Then she made the call. Luca answered on the second ring. Elena, what's wrong? The meeting tomorrow, she said, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. It's a trap. Salvatore flipped. There will be federal agents waiting to arrest you. Silence on the other end. Then, how do you know this? Anonymous tip, just like the ones I made about Anthony and Vincent. Someone wants me to know. Someone wants me to warn you. Or someone wants to test your loyalty. See which side you're really on. His voice was careful, calculating. If you're telling the truth, you just saved my life. If this is a trick, it's not a trick. I'm burning my career to warn you. That should tell you something. Another pause. It tells me you made a choice. A final one. No going back from this. I know, Elena said quietly. Thank you, Luca said simply. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, stay home like we planned. Let me handle this. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago. Remove the threat completely. Just differently than I'd planned. His voice hardened. Salvatore thinks he's won by making a deal with federal prosecutors. He's wrong. You can't betray your way to safety. He's about to learn that lesson. Luca, sleep, Elena. Tomorrow, this ends. And then we figure out what comes after. He hung up before she could respond. Elena sat in the darkness of her apartment, holding a phone that contained evidence of her final betrayal. She'd just warned a crime boss about a federal operation, had actively interfered with justice, had chosen a side, irrevocably and completely. There was no going back now. No redemption, no return to innocence, no way to pretend she was still the person who'd walked into that restaurant 4 days ago, that Elena was gone, destroyed in the space between what was right and what was necessary. Tomorrow would bring endings. The question was whether those endings would destroy her completely or forge her into something new, something that could survive in the gray spaces between law and justice, between oath and necessity, between who she'd been and who she'd chosen to become. Sleep didn't come easily that night, and when it did, it brought dreams of choices made and lines crossed, of the woman she used to be watching from a distance as the woman she'd become walked deeper into darkness, following a path that led somewhere she couldn't yet see, but knew she could never return from. Tuesday morning arrived with rain again, as if the city itself was mourning what was about to happen. Elena sat in her apartment staring at the Camorra files on her laptop, 40 gigabytes of evidence that should have felt like victory, but instead felt like payment for sins she hadn't finished committing yet. Her phone had been silent all morning. No calls from Luca, no updates from Morrison, no anonymous warnings from mysterious voices. Just silence and rain and the weight of waiting for an ending she couldn't control. At 11 a.m., her phone finally rang. Morrison. Elena, we have a situation. Her pulse spiked. What kind of situation? Salvatore Russo came in last night. He's cooperating. Full immunity deal in exchange for testimony against the DeSantis organization. He's giving us everything. Names, locations, financial records, the complete hierarchy. Elena forced her voice to stay neutral. That's good news, isn't it? Major case, major witness? It would be if I trusted him, but something feels wrong. He's too eager, too detailed, like he's reading from a script. Morrison paused. He claims there's going to be an attempt on his life tonight. Says Luca found out about his cooperation and scheduled a meeting to eliminate him. He wants us to set up a sting, catch Luca in the act. Are you going to do it? Already in motion. We've got a team positioning now. If Luca shows up to that meeting, we'll have him on attempted murder, conspiracy, the works. Another pause. Elena, I need you to stay clear of this operation. Whatever relationship you've built with your sources in that organization, tonight you're federal only. Understood? Understood, Elena lied. Good. Go dark until this is over. I don't want any complications. The line went dead. Elena sat staring at her phone, mind racing through scenarios. Luca knew about the trap. She'd warned him. So either he'd cancel the meeting, or he'd have a plan to turn it to his advantage. Either way, tonight would end with someone in custody or someone dead. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Just an address in Red Hook and a time, 8 p.m. Not Luca's loft. Somewhere new. Somewhere the FBI wouldn't know to watch. Elena knew she should ignore it. Should stay in her apartment like Morrison ordered, like Luca had told her to do, keeping herself clean and separate from whatever was about to happen. Instead, she checked her weapon, grabbed her jacket, and started planning how to get to Red Hook without being followed by either side. The address led to an old shipping warehouse on the waterfront, the kind of place that appeared on no official records and asked no official questions. Elena arrived at 7:30, early enough to scope the location, but late enough that whoever was already there would know she was coming. The main door was unlocked. Inside, the warehouse had been converted into something between a fortress and a tomb. Steel doors at key points, cameras in corners, the infrastructure of paranoia made physical. Voices echoed from deeper in the building. Elena followed them to a large central space where Luca stood with Enzo, Dante, and Marco, studying blueprints spread across a table that looked like it had been set up specifically for this meeting. Luca looked up as she entered, his expression unreadable. I told you to stay home. You also gave me this address, So, which instruction was I supposed to follow? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Fair point. Come here. Elena crossed to the table, saw the blueprints were of another warehouse, the location where Salvatore thought the meeting was happening tonight, where federal agents were probably already positioning. You're not going, she said, understanding. Oh, I'm going, just not the way Salvatore expects. Luca tapped a section of the blueprint. This warehouse has a secondary entrance through the old loading tunnels, connects to 3 other buildings, exits onto 4 different streets, built during Prohibition for exactly this kind of situation. You're going to ambush him, Elena said. I'm going to have a conversation with him about loyalty, about consequences, about the price of betrayal. Luca's voice was cold, devoid of emotion. What happens after that conversation depends on what he says. The FBI will be there. If you kill him in front of federal agents, I'm not going to kill him in front of federal agents. I'm going to extract him through the tunnels, have our conversation elsewhere, and by the time the FBI realizes what happened, Salvatore will have disappeared, and they'll be left with an empty warehouse and no case. It was bold, dangerous, the kind of plan that required perfect timing and absolute confidence. Exactly the kind of thing Luca would attempt. You'll never get him out without being seen, Elena said. I will if the FBI is distracted. If something happens to draw their attention away from the secondary entrance for exactly 3 minutes. Luca looked at her directly. That's why you're here. I need you to create that distraction. Elena's stomach dropped. You want me to interfere with a federal operation. I want you to help me prevent a war. Salvatore doesn't get to betray everyone and walk away into witness protection. He doesn't get to win by cooperating with the people who've been trying to destroy us for years. There has to be accountability. Accountability means murder. Accountability means consequences proportional to actions. Luca moved closer to her, his intensity radiating like heat. Salvatore tried to kill me. Tried to start a war that would have killed dozens, maybe hundreds. He betrayed his oath, his family, everything he claimed to believe in. And now he's making deals with federal prosecutors, selling out everyone he ever worked with to save his own skin. You tell me what justice looks like for that. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to find the flaw in his logic, but she couldn't. Because deep down, she agreed with him. Salvatore didn't deserve witness protection, didn't deserve to walk away clean while better men paid the price for his ambition. What do you need me to do? She asked quietly. Luca's expression softened slightly, something like relief flickering across his features. At exactly 8:15, you call in a tip to the FBI command post. Anonymous, untraceable. Tell them there's a secondary team of Luca's men approaching from the north side. They'll have to reposition to intercept, which will leave the south tunnel unguarded for 3 minutes. That's all I need. And if they catch you anyway? They won't. But if they do, Luca smiled without humor. Then I spend the rest of my life in prison, and you go back to being the agent who brought down the DeSantis organization. Everyone wins except me. That's not winning. No, Luca agreed, but it's surviving, which is sometimes the best we can hope for. The next 2 hours passed in tense preparation. Enzo checked equipment, Marco verified escape routes, Dante coordinated with loyal people positioned throughout the area. Elena watched them work with the practiced efficiency of a team that had operated together for years, their movements synchronized, their communication minimal and precise. At 7:45, Luca changed into dark clothing, no jewelry, nothing identifiable. He looked younger somehow, more like the soldier he must have been before inheriting an empire, before responsibility and power had carved lines into his face. You ready? Enzo asked him. Always. Luca turned to Elena. You remember the timing? 8:15 exactly, anonymous tip about men approaching from the north. Good. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough to feel the tension radiating from him. After tonight, you take the Camorra files and you build your case. You become the agent who dismantled the biggest drug network on the East Coast. You get medals, commendations, everything you deserve. And you? I go back to running my empire. Smaller now, more careful, but intact. We never speak again. We pretend this week never happened. His hand came up, almost touched her face, then dropped. That's the deal. That's how this ends. What if I don't want it to end like that? Elena heard herself ask. Luca went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying I've crossed so many lines already that a few more don't matter. I'm saying maybe the person I used to be doesn't exist anymore. I'm saying... She stopped, trying to find words for something she barely understood herself. I'm saying I don't know how to go back to my old life after this. Elena, don't. Don't tell me I'll adjust, that time will make it easier, that I'll find my way back to who I was. We both know that's not true. She looked at him directly, unflinching. I helped you plan murders. I interfered with federal operations. I made choices that destroyed everything I thought I believed in. And the worst part is, I'm not sure I regret it. Luca was quiet for a long moment, something complex and unreadable moving across his face. You're talking about throwing away your career, your life, everything you've worked for. I'm talking about choosing a different life, one where I don't have to pretend the world is simpler than it is, where I can make decisions based on what's necessary instead of what's legal. She smiled without humor. You said I was becoming someone new. Maybe that someone doesn't belong in the FBI anymore. You don't know what you're asking for. This life, it's not freedom, Elena. It's a different kind of prison, one you can never leave. And the FBI isn't a prison? Following rules that don't account for reality, watching criminals walk free on technicalities, knowing we could do more if we weren't so concerned with procedure? Elena shook her head. At least with you, I'd be doing something that matters, making real change instead of filing reports and hoping someone else takes action. You'd be a criminal, Luca said bluntly, hunted by your former colleagues, unable to ever go back. I'm already a criminal. I just haven't been caught yet. She pulled out her phone, showed him the timestamp on her warning about the federal trap. The moment I made this call, I became something other than federal. We both know it. Enzo cleared his throat uncomfortably. Boss, we need to move. Luca's eyes never left Elena's face. We'll talk about this after, when tonight is over and we're both still alive to have the conversation. Deal? Deal, Elena agreed. He left then, disappearing into the tunnels with Enzo and Marco, leaving Elena alone with Dante and the blueprints and the weight of what she was about to do. At 8 p.m., she watched through a cracked window as federal vehicles positioned around the Target warehouse 3 blocks away. Unmarked cars, tactical teams, the full apparatus of law enforcement preparing to catch a crime boss in the act of murder. Her former colleagues, doing their jobs, following orders, believing they were on the side of justice. Elena checked her burner phone, verified the number for the FBI command post, rehearsed the words she'd say. 3 minutes. That's all Luca needed. 3 minutes of distraction while federal agents repositioned for a threat that didn't exist. At 8:12, her regular phone rang. Morrison. Elena, where are you? Her heart stopped. Home. Like you told me. Why? We've been getting strange reports. Anonymous tips that match the pattern of the calls that led us to Anthony Messina and Vincent Carbone. Same phone technology, same level of detail, same... He paused. Same source. Someone with insider knowledge of organized crime operations has been feeding us intelligence. Someone who knows things they shouldn't know. I don't understand what that has to do with me. Don't you? You've been deep cover for 8 months. You've had access to information most federal agents never see. And suddenly we're getting tips that are too good, too accurate, too... Another pause. Elena, I need you to tell me the truth. Have you been in contact with Luca DeSantis outside of your cover role? Sir, Don't lie to me. I've been doing this too long to be fooled. Something's happening tonight that you know about, and I need you to tell me what it is before people die. Elena looked at the clock. 8:13. 2 minutes until she was supposed to make the call that would let Luca escape, that would complete her transformation from federal agent to criminal accomplice. I can't, she said quietly. Can't or won't. Both. Silence on the other end. Then Morrison's voice, heavy with disappointment. You're burning your career for a criminal. You know that, right? Whatever he's promised you, whatever you think you're accomplishing, it's not worth it. You don't know what I've seen, what I've learned. The world isn't as simple as we pretend it is. The world is exactly as simple as right and wrong, legal and illegal, oath and betrayal. And right now you're choosing the wrong side of all three. His voice hardened. I'm ordering you to tell me what you know. Consider that a direct command from your superior officer. 8:14. 1 minute. Elena made her choice. I'm sorry, sir. I can't do that. She hung up, turned off her phone, picked up the burner. At exactly 8:15, she called the FBI command post, disguised her voice, delivered the tip about Luca's men approaching from the north. Watched through the window as tactical teams repositioned as the south entrance went unguarded, as 3 shadows slipped through the tunnel opening and disappeared into the target building. 30 seconds later, gunfire erupted. Not from inside the warehouse, from the street. Federal agents shouting, civilians screaming, chaos spreading like wildfire through the operation. Elena's blood turned to ice. That wasn't supposed to happen. Luca said it would be clean, quiet, a simple extraction while the FBI was distracted. More gunfire, return fire. Someone was shooting at federal agents. Dante was already moving, phone pressed to his ear, his face going pale. That's not us. Luca didn't authorize. He stopped, listened, then looked at Elena with something close to horror. It's Salvatore. He brought his own people, convinced the FBI he needed protection, then armed them and told them to open fire when Luca showed up. He's trying to start the war anyway, using federal agents as cover. Elena's mind raced through the implications. Salvatore wasn't just cooperating with the FBI. He was manipulating them, using them as weapons, creating exactly the chaos that would justify witness protection while eliminating his enemies. We have to stop this, she said. How? Luca's inside with Salvatore. Federal agents are outside getting shot at by men they think are Luca's. If we intervene, we're dead or arrested. Dante was already packing up equipment, preparing to evacuate. We cut our losses and run. No! Elena grabbed her weapon, checked the magazine. I'm federal. I can end this. You're burned federal. The moment you show your face, the moment I show my face, I have credibility those tactical teams don't have. I can tell them Salvatore's lying, that his men are shooting at them, that this whole thing is a setup. She was already moving toward the door. Stay here. If I don't come back, Elena, this is suicide. Probably. But it's better than letting innocent agents die because I helped set this trap. She ran before Dante could stop her, sprinting through rain-soaked streets toward the sound of gunfire, toward chaos, toward the ending she should have seen coming. The scene outside the warehouse was carnage. 2 federal vehicles burning, agents taking cover behind cars, civilians fleeing in panic. And in the middle of it all, Salvatore's men firing with the precise aggression of people who'd been promised immunity for anything they did tonight. Elena spotted Morrison behind an SUV, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead, shouting orders into a radio. She ran to him, sliding into cover beside him. Elena, what the hell are you doing here? Salvatore set you up. Those aren't Luca's men shooting at you. They're Salvatore's. He's using you to start a war. Morrison stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Salvatore's inside under protective custody. He's the victim here. He's the orchestrator. He brought armed men to a federal operation and told them to open fire. He wants chaos so he can disappear into witness protection while everyone else destroys each other. That's insane. Is it? When did witness protection start allowing targets to bring their own security to federal operations? When did cooperation include coordinating armed response? Elena grabbed his arm. You've been played. We all have. Salvatore is not your witness. He's using you as cover for mass murder. Morrison's expression shifted, doubt creeping in. He barked into his radio. Team 2, verify the custody status on Salvatore Russo. Eyes on. Confirm location. The response came back crackling with static and panic. He's gone, sir. Protective detail found unconscious. Russo's in the wind. Morrison's face went white. He looked at Elena, then at the burning vehicles, then back at her. If you're wrong about this, I'm not wrong. I've been inside this organization for 8 months. I know how they think, how they operate. And I know Salvatore's been planning this endgame since before I ever walked into that restaurant. Elena pulled out her service weapon. Let me end this. One shot. Clean, before more of your people die. You can't just execute. Gunfire cut off his objection. Another agent went down screaming. Morrison made his decision. Do it. But if you're wrong, if this is some play to save Luca, it's not about Luca. It's about stopping a massacre. Elena scanned the battlefield, looking for Salvatore in the chaos. She found him 50 yards away, directing his men from behind cover, his phone pressed to his ear, probably coordinating with whoever was paying him to create this disaster. Elena sighted carefully, controlled her breathing, squeezed the trigger. The shot took Salvatore in the shoulder, spinning him around, dropping him. Not fatal. She wasn't ready to cross that final line, but enough to neutralize him. His men, seeing their leader down, hesitated. That moment of confusion was all the federal tactical team needed. Within seconds, they'd moved in, disarmed Salvatore's crew, secured the area. The gunfire stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. Morrison was already moving, barking orders, coordinating medical response. Elena stood in the rain, her weapon still raised, watching federal agents swarm over Salvatore's position. A hand touched her shoulder. She spun, weapon up, found herself facing Luca. He looked unharmed, though his clothes were torn and his face was grim. You saved their lives, the federal agents. Salvatore was going to kill them all. I know. Elena lowered her weapon. Where were you? Inside. I had Salvatore. Had him exactly where I wanted him. Then his men opened fire and everything went to hell. Luca's jaw tightened. He used the federal operation as cover for murder. Used their presence to create the chaos he needed. Brilliant, really. Insane, but brilliant. He's alive. Wounded, but alive. They'll take him into custody now. Real custody. And he'll face charges for everything. Elena looked at Luca directly. It's over. You won. Salvatore's finished. We won, Luca corrected. You stopped him, saved lives, protected people who would have died because of his ambition. He paused. But you also destroyed your cover completely. Every federal agent here saw you, knows you were helping me. Your career is over. Elena looked around at the chaos. Wounded agents, burning vehicles, Salvatore being dragged away in handcuffs. Her former colleagues, her former life, all of it visible in the firelight and rain. I know, she said quietly. Morrison appeared beside them, his expression unreadable. Elena, we need to talk. Sir? Save it. I don't know what the hell happened here tonight, but I know you're involved deeper than you should be. I know you've been making calls, providing intelligence, working angles I don't understand. He glanced at Luca. And I know you're standing next to the primary target of a federal investigation like your old friends. It's complicated, Elena said. It's career suicide. You're done, Elena. Suspended pending investigation, probably facing charges yourself. The moment you shot Salvatore, the moment you interfered with this operation, Morrison shook his head. I can't protect you from this. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking for? Elena looked at Morrison, then at Luca, then at the wreckage of the operation around them. I'm asking you to let me walk away. Tonight. Right now. Before the investigation starts, before charges are filed. Let me disappear, and you can write this up however you need to. That's desertion. That's survival. Because if I stay, if I try to explain what happened, the truth won't set me free. It'll just destroy more lives. She pulled her badge from her pocket, held it out to him. I'm done being federal, sir. I'm choosing a different path. Morrison stared at the badge in her hand, his face working through visible conflict. Finally, he took it, pocketed it without looking at it. You have 12 hours before I report you missing. After that, you're a fugitive. Understand? Yes, sir. And Elena? His voice softened slightly. Whatever you think you're doing, whatever you think this life with him will be, it won't end well. It never does. Maybe not, but it'll be my choice, my consequences. She extended her hand. Thank you for everything you taught me. Morrison shook her hand once, brief and formal. Then he turned and walked back toward his team, leaving Elena and Luca standing in the rain. You really did it, Luca said quietly. Walked away from everything. Not from everything, toward something. There's a difference. Elena looked at him directly. You still need someone who knows how federal investigations work, who can anticipate law enforcement moves, who can help you stay ahead of the next threat. And I need... She stopped, searching for the right words. You need to do something that matters, Luca finished. To make decisions based on necessity instead of procedure. To operate in the spaces between law and justice. Yes. It won't be easy. My world doesn't forgive mistakes. Doesn't offer second chances. You'll be making choices that keep you up at night, compromises that eat away at what's left of your conscience. I know, but at least they'll be my choices, my compromises. Elena smiled slightly. And maybe, with someone federal trained helping you, we can minimize the body count. Make this empire something less destructive. You're talking about reforming organized crime from the inside. I'm talking about harm reduction, about using the power you have to cause less damage instead of more. It's not redemption, but it's something. Luca studied her for a long moment, rain streaming down his face, his expression complex and unreadable. Then he smiled, and it was genuine, warm, the smile of someone seeing possibility where there'd been only darkness. Welcome to the other side, Elena Moretti. Or should I say, former Special Agent Moretti. Just Elena. That's who I am now. No titles, no cover stories. Just someone trying to survive in the gray spaces. Then let's go home. We have a lot to discuss. They walked away from the burning vehicles, from the federal agents securing the scene, from the life Elena had spent years building. She didn't look back. Looking back meant regretting, and regret was a luxury she could no longer afford. Luca's hand found hers in the darkness, warm and solid, an anchor in the storm. What happens now? She asked. Now we rebuild. The organization, the alliances, everything Salvatore tried to destroy. It'll take months, maybe years, but we'll do it together. Partners. Partners, Elena agreed, testing the word, finding it fit better than she'd expected. They reached Luca's car, a different one than before, nondescript, forgettable, and drove away from Red Hook, from the chaos, from the ending that had become a beginning. 3 months later, Elena stood in Luca's rebuilt loft, reviewing intelligence on a laptop, while he discussed strategy with Enzo and Dante. The Camorra files had been delivered to the FBI anonymously, triggering the largest organized crime investigation in decades. 50 arrests, hundreds of charges, the entire supply network dismantled. Morrison had called it the case of his career, had been promoted, commended, held up as an example of excellent federal work. He'd never mentioned Elena's name in any report. She'd become a ghost. The federal agent who'd disappeared without a trace, presumed dead by most, forgotten by the rest. Better that way. Cleaner. What do you think? Luca asked, interrupting her thoughts. The Queen's territory? Worth the investment? Elena studied the map, analyzed the risk assessment, considered the angles. Not yet. The Albanians are still too strong there. Wait 6 months, let them overextend, then move when they're vulnerable. Patience, Luca said approvingly. You're learning. I had a good teacher. She closed the laptop. The Ferrante case went to trial today. Did you see? I saw. 3 defendants, all convicted. Conspiracy to commit murder. They'll spend the next 20 years in prison. Luca moved to the window, his usual thinking position. We saved his life, you know, that night at the restaurant. If you hadn't overheard, hadn't warned me, he'd be dead and his daughter would be fatherless. I know. Elena joined him at the window, looked out at the Brooklyn skyline. Sometimes I wonder if that was the first choice that mattered, the one that started everything else. Do you regret it? Elena considered the question honestly. Did she regret saving a man's life, preventing a murder, crossing the line from observer to participant? No, she said finally. I regret what it cost, but not what it achieved. That's the difference between theory and practice, Luca said quietly. In theory, we should never compromise our principles. In practice, principles don't save lives. Choices do. Is that what we tell ourselves? To make the compromises easier? No, it's what we accept to keep making the hard choices when easy answers don't exist. He turned to face her. You could still leave. Take what's left of your life, start over somewhere far from here. New identity, new history, clean slate. I could, Elena agreed, but I won't. Because somewhere in the past 3 months, this stopped being about survival and started being about something else. What? Purpose. For the first time in my life, I'm not following someone else's rules, someone else's idea of justice. I'm making my own. And yes, sometimes those choices are wrong. Sometimes people get hurt who shouldn't, but at least they're my mistakes to own. Luca's expression softened. You've changed. From the woman who walked into my restaurant 3 months ago. So have you. You're more careful now, more strategic, less willing to use violence as the first solution. Maybe you're rubbing off on me. Or maybe we're both becoming something new, something that doesn't fit the old categories of criminal or federal, right or wrong. Elena smiled. Something that survives in the gray spaces. Partners in the gray, Luca said, echoing her earlier words. Partners in the gray, she agreed. He pulled her close, and she let him, let herself rest against someone who understood the weight of impossible choices and moral compromise, someone who knew what it cost to survive in a world that demanded perfection while offering only shades of gray. I love you, Luca said quietly, the words almost lost in the space between them. Elena froze, not expecting that, not ready for that particular truth. But when she searched herself honestly, she found the answer had been there for weeks, maybe longer, buried under pragmatism and self-preservation and the need to pretend this was just tactical alliance. I know, she said, I love you too, which is possibly the most complicated thing I've ever admitted. Why complicated? Because love is supposed to be pure, uncomplicated, the one thing we don't have to analyze and strategize. But this, us, it's built on compromise and calculation and choices that would destroy most relationships. Or maybe it's honest in a way most relationships never achieve. No illusions, no pretending we're better than we are. Just two people choosing each other despite knowing exactly what that choice costs. Luca's arms tightened around her. I'll take complicated honesty over simple lies any day. Even when honesty means admitting we're both criminals now? Both operating outside the law we claim to respect? Especially then. Because at least we're honest criminals. We know what we are, what we've become. That's more than most people can say. Elena laughed, but it was genuine, warm, the sound of someone finding humor in the absurdity of their situation. We're terrible people, you know that? The worst, Luca agreed cheerfully. But we're terrible people who prevent wars, save lives, and try to minimize the damage our world causes. That has to count for something. Does it? When we're still running a criminal organization, still profiting from illegal activities, still making choices that hurt people? Yes, because the alternative isn't some perfect world where crime doesn't exist. The alternative is chaos, violence, predators worse than us filling the vacuum we'd leave. This way, at least we can control the damage. Limit the casualties, choose who survives and who doesn't. It was the same argument he'd made 3 months ago, the same logic that had convinced her to cross the first line. But now, having lived it, having made the choices and lived with the consequences, Elena found she actually believed it. Not because it was right, but because it was necessary. And sometimes, in the gray spaces between law and justice, necessity was the closest thing to righteousness that existed. 6 months later, Elena and Luca stood on the roof of his loft, watching the sun set over Brooklyn. The organization had stabilized, Salvatore's attempted coup now a cautionary tale told in whispers. Anthony and Vincent were serving federal time, Salvatore himself was in maximum security after trying to kill federal agents, and Paolo had been recalled to Italy in disgrace. Frank De Luca had sent a wedding invitation. Elena and Luca had attended, toasting the bride, celebrating family, pretending they were normal people living normal lives. The Camorra network had been dismantled, exactly as promised. Morrison had made deputy director on the strength of that case. He'd sent Elena a message through encrypted channels, just 2 words. Thank you. She'd replied with 3, worth the cost. What are you thinking about? Luca asked, his arm around her shoulders. Endings and beginnings. How sometimes they're the same thing, just viewed from different angles. Elena leaned into him, comfortable now in a way she'd never expected to be. I walked into your restaurant 6 months ago as one person. Walked out as someone completely different. Better or worse? Different. Maybe more honest. Definitely more complicated. She smiled. But alive. Really alive in a way I never was when I was following rules and pretending the world was simpler than it is. No regrets? Elena thought about her badge, surrendered in the rain, about Morrison's disappointment, about the career she'd destroyed and the oath she'd broken, about all the choices that had led her here, to this rooftop, to this man, to this life. Regrets? Hundreds. But not about this. Not about choosing you, choosing survival, choosing to operate in the gray spaces where real change happens. She turned to face him. We're building something here, aren't we? Something that's not quite legal, but not quite evil. Something that exists in the spaces between. An empire with a conscience, Luca said, or at least less of a body count than the alternative. It's not redemption, but it's something, Elena finished. Something worth fighting for, worth compromising for, worth becoming someone new for. They stood together as the sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, the city spreading out below them in all its chaotic, beautiful, impossible complexity. Somewhere in Manhattan, federal agents were planning investigations. Somewhere in Brooklyn, criminals were planning crimes. Somewhere in the spaces between Elena and Luca were planning something else. A way to survive in the gray, to cause less damage instead of more, to choose who lived and who didn't, with the kind of calculated mercy that passed for justice in their world. It wasn't a happy ending. Happy endings required certainty, required the good guys to win cleanly and the bad guys to lose completely. But it was an ending, and more importantly, it was a beginning. Elena Moretti, former special agent, current criminal, forever changed, looked at the man beside her and knew she'd made the right choice. Not the legal choice, not the one her training had prepared her for, not the one that would let her sleep easily at night, but the necessary choice. The choice that saved lives and prevented wars and kept the chaos at bay for another day. In the gray spaces between right and wrong, between law and justice, between who she'd been and who she'd become, Elena had found something she'd never expected. She'd found home. And if that home was built on compromise and calculation, on choices that would horrify her former colleagues and destroy any chance of redemption, well, at least it was honest. At least it was real. At least it was hers. The city lights began to flicker on below, thousands of lives being lived in thousands of different ways, each person making their own choices, their own compromises, their own decisions about what mattered and what didn't. Elena squeezed Luca's hand, felt him squeeze back, and knew that whatever came next, investigation, prosecution, violence, war, or peace, they'd face it together. Partners in the gray, equals in the darkness, survivors in a world that demanded perfection while offering only shades of wrong. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough.